The Atlanta Ripper was an unidentified serial killer who targeted women in the city of Atlanta from 1909 to 1924. Many articles and newspaper clippings online say that the Atlanta Ripper started in 1911 and ended his crime spree in 1913, but I have found evidence that the Atlanta Ripper crime spree has started since 1909. The following article is from the Atlanta Georgian and the News, dated February 22, 1909. Body of negress tells of murder while two little boys were playing near the dumping grounds in Bedford Place just off of Ponce de Leon. Sunday at noon, they found a pair of shoes protruding from the ground, and they started to pick them up. As they did so, they made a gruesome discovery that the shoes were attached to a human body. The body, when dug up, was found to be that of a young woman, apparently 20 years of age, who had been murdered by a blow to the side of her head. The murderer had taken the body to the dumping ground and buried it, but had left the feet protruding. The woman's identity has not been learned. Coroner Donahue held an inquest Monday at noon. Detectives Lockhart and Rowan are investigating the mystery. On February 22nd, 1909, the Atlanta Journal also published an article on this murder titled "Woman's Corpse Found by Boys. Shoe Protruding from Trash Heap Led to Gruesome Discovery by Three Little Boys." Three little boys playing in a strip of woods just off Bedford Place and Ponce de Leon Avenue Sunday saw a shoe protruding from a trash pile. "Why, it's new," said one. He caught the shoe and tugged at it, and an ankle appeared from the trash. Frightened out of their wits, the three boys ran in the direction of Ponce de Leon Avenue and told a passerby what they had discovered. Investigation was made, and the body of a Negro girl, apparently about 15 years of age, was found. There were unmistakable evidence that she had been murdered. In one cheek was a deep wound, and there were marks about her throat which showed that she had been choked. In a few minutes, such a crowd of Negroes had gathered that it seemed a squad of policemen must be summoned to disperse them. But despite the presence of the large crowd, no one could identify the body. It is the theory of the police that the girl was murdered elsewhere and that the place she was murdered may be some distance from the place where she was found. She is described as having been of a ginger cake color with young, immature features. Her dress was of dark blue worsted and her waist of a sky blue color. The stockings she wore were very peculiarly striped. It is believed from the conditions of the body that she was murdered Friday. Monday morning an inquest was held, and officers Coker and Wood are working on the case. On February 26, 1909, the same newspaper, the Atlanta Georgian and the News, reported on the identification of the murdered woman and of the arrest of two suspects. Body is identified. Murdered Negro woman was Marie Gillard. The body of the murdered Negro woman found buried last Sunday in the dumping ground just off Ponce de Leon Ave has been positively identified as that of Marie Gillard, who lived in the rear of Madison Ave and Hunter Street. Policemen Wood and Coker have arrested two Negro men in connection with the murder. On March 8th, 1909, the Atlanta Georgian and the News reported on the discovery of another body near where Marie Gillard had been discovered. The article is entitled "Negro Woman's Body Found Half Buried, Victim of Second Murder Near City Dumping Ground." The discovery Sunday afternoon of the body of another murdered Negro woman has led detectives to believe that a black Jack the Ripper is at work in Atlanta. The body of the woman, badly decomposed, was found buried in a dumping ground in Bedford Place, just off of Ponce de Leon Avenue, just a few feet from the spot where the body of another murdered woman was unearthed Sunday a week ago. The circumstances lead to the theory that both murders were committed by the same person and that the murderer is a Negro with a mania for slaying women. The clothing found on the second murdered victim woman was of a stylish quality and indicates she may have been a member of the better class of Negroes. The body itself was so badly decomposed that identification from the features is an impossibility. It may be possible, however, that the clothing will disclose the identity of the woman. The first of the women to be murdered in the dumping ground was Marie Gillard. It was several days before she was positively identified. The discovery of the second crime was made in the same manner as the first, one of the woman's feet being found protruding from the ground. Coroner Donahue is making an investigation and is being aided by detectives Hood and Arthur. This article is important because it states that the police believe that the murderer of both women was a black man, aka a black Jack the Ripper. People must know that people associate the term Jack the Ripper with the Whitechapel murderer who targeted London in the years of 1888. But the term was often used to refer to other serial killers besides the Whitechapel Ripper in in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. The reason why the police may have speculated that the killer was black was because the victims were colored. And most FBI profilers, when they do profiles, come to the conclusion that most serial killers are of the same race as the victims that they target. That most serial killers target victims of their own race. Although criminal profiling was not in general use in the early 1900s, it may be the same reasoning that led to the police believing that their killer was a black man. The Atlanta Journal also printed a front-page article about the two murders, entitled "Woman's Dead Body is Found Near Ponce de Leon." Within 100 yards of where body of negress was found 2 months ago, the bleached bones of another woman's body is found. Police believe same man killed both women. Underneath the picture it reads, "Lonely spot near Ponce de Leon where the bodies of two women have been found in 2 weeks." The bleached bones of an unknown woman were found Sunday afternoon in a lonely stretch of woods off Ponce de Leon Avenue and within 100 yards of where the body of a girl was found about 2 weeks ago. Both are believed to have been murdered, and it is probable that both were murdered by the same individual. The police are seriously considering the fact that some sort of Jack the Ripper has been at work in Atlanta. Their theory is that, satisfied with the fact that his first victim was apparently escaping discovery, he buried his next in the same locality. Boy makes discovery. A little boy playing about in the woods saw a piece of bone sticking out from the ground Sunday afternoon, and he asked W. M. Hughes of Reynolds-Town, who happened to be passing down the path, what it was. The latter investigated and found the skeleton of a woman, or rather of a girl. Sewer empties nearby. Just a few feet away, a big sewer empties out, and the water pours down with a roar. All around are woods with hills sloping up on each side. The place is 50 yards or more from Ponce de Leon Avenue. It is just where Jackson Street would be if protruding through if penetrated through. It is believed that the girl was a negress. The body found near it several weeks ago was that of a Negro girl about 16 years of age. The first body was found just off of the sewer and only a few yards away from Bedford Place. The second was found only a few feet away from the sewer and not more than a block away. A part of the jawbone is missing, and this may mean that the victim was shot and the bullet penetrated the jaw, or that she was struck with some instrument buried weeks ago. Evidently, the body had been buried for many weeks. The bones are bleached and bare, and the clothing has begun to decay. The murderer must have buried the body there in the lonely place, and seeing that it apparently was escaping detection, brought his second victim there, thinking it was the safest spot to be found. Little boy playing discovered both bodies. In the first instance, a shoe was seen protruding from the trash pile, and when it was pulled, an ankle came out from the pile of garbage. The body in that case had not been buried for more than a day or two, and the features were still clear and distinct. Finally, it was identified, and several suspects were arrested by the police, who murdered but all have been since released. Who murdered the girl is still a mystery. It is now doubled in horror by the discovery that a second victim lay but 100 yards away. A lonely spot, the place where the first body was discovered, it just in back of one of the most prominent resident sections of the city. The back fence of one house is not over 20 yards away, but the bones of the second victim were found in a very wild spot, though not far distant. Off to the left can be seen several small houses, but there are no dwellings immediately about. Several paths wind out from there, and then someone passes by, but the place has a forbidding air that makes the number small. Though the clothes, though the clothes that lay with the bleached bones have begun to decay, their quality and color are still distinguishable. They consist of a dark shirt, a white embroidered waist, a blue jacket with braid and pockets on the outside, and a black corded belt with a large imitation buckle. The matter was reported to the police Sunday afternoon, and an investigation was made by Officers Hood and Arthur Monday morning, and the coroner held an inquest. The Atlanta Constitution also reported on these two cases in an article titled "Body of Young Woman Found in Lonely Spot. Officers Believe Victim is a Negro Girl. Coroner Holds Inquest." In a lonely spot a short distance off of Ponce de Leon Avenue and near the foot of Jackson Street, the bleached bones of a young woman were found Sunday afternoon by W. W. Hughes of Reynolds-Town. The matter was reported to the local police, and detectives Hood and Arthur were detailed on the case. Although they believe the girl was murdered, the detectives have so far made no arrests and are completely baffled. Coroner Donahue held an inquest but succeeded in shedding no light on the mystery. The body, partly decomposed, had still around it stripes of clothing, and the authorities think the body that of a Negro girl, and they say they believe she was murdered. About 2 weeks ago, a similar discovery was made by small boys in the neighborhood who found a body under a pile of trash. After the discovery of the body of the first two victims, theories about a Jack the Ripper fell silent, even though another woman, Della Reed, was found underneath trash cans on April 5th, 1909. There was no mention of the Jack the Ripper theory. On September 1909, the Atlanta Georgian published an article about the remains of an unidentified woman found in Peachtree Creek. The article reads, "Remains of woman found in creek. Discovery was made Tuesday morning about 10 o'clock, lying face down in the water and lodged against the bank. The remains of a Negro woman were found Tuesday morning about 10 o'clock in Peachtree Creek, a short distance from the Peachtree Bridge. Whether the woman was murdered and thrown into the creek, whether she committed suicide or accidentally fell into the water is not known. Lieutenant Cheshire and County Policeman Madison, Walters, and Butler were soon on the scene and are making an investigation. Coroner Donahue was also notified and will hold an inquest. The remains were found by a Negro driver for Pope and Collier contractors who had gone to the creek to haul sand. The woman's hat was found in the water a few feet from the remains. On January 23rd, 1911, all three city newspapers reported on the murder of Rosa Trice. This is from the Atlanta Georgian and the Nose. Negro woman killed, no clue to slayer, with the left side of her skull crushed by a blow from a blunt instrument, and her throat and jaw slashed with knife wounds. Rosa Trice, a Negro woman, was found dead 75 yards from her house in Gardner Street, Pittsburgh, Sunday. An inquest held Sunday afternoon found that death was due to violence and the circumstances indicated foul play, but was no evidence as to her assailant was given. John Trice, the woman's husband, was arrested at his house an hour or two after the body was found, but neither the police nor the county officials could produce any evidence to he could be held, and he was released Sunday night. The police are still working on the case. The following account is from the Atlanta Journal published on the same day. Woman's body found on railroad tracks. Rosa Charles foully murdered, throat cut, skull and jaw broken. The body of a Negro woman, Rosa Price, 50 years of age, of 54 Garner Street, was found on the Southern Railway tracks near the Garner Street crossing at an early hour Sunday morning. The woman had been horribly beaten with some blunt instrument, her skull and jawbone fractured. After beating the woman, the murderer had cut a gash in her throat, severing the jugular vein. The woman's stepson, the last person with her, was arrested but released by the coroner's jury after the inquest Sunday morning. Officers Clark and Russo are working on the case, but as yet they have no evidence. Atlanta Constitution, January 23rd. 1911, Negro woman is found murdered near home, with her throat cut and skull crushed. Rosa Trice, a colored woman about 35 years old, of Gardner Street near the Southern Railroad in Pittsburgh, was found brutally murdered about 75 yards from her home. The murder had evidently been committed sometime during the night, and she had lain in the street for some hours after death. Her body had been dragged from for some distance by her assailant. No weapon was left to show the manner of the crime. The left side of her head was crushed with some blunt instrument, and she had received a stab in the jaw and her throat was cut. John Trace, the husband of the woman, was arrested at their home shortly after the crime had been discovered and was locked up till an investigation could be held. At the coroner's inquest Sunday afternoon, the verdict of death by violence was found, but no evidence could be secured to connect Trice with the murder, and he was released. Detectives Harper and Kilpatrick are working on the case. February 20th, 1911. Beer battles surround murdered woman's body. The body of an unknown negress found in woods beyond city limits. The body of an unknown Negro woman, about 25 years old, with the head crushed, was found Sunday morning in the woods just beyond the city limits near the West Point Beltline car line by a Negro man who had notified some white people of his discovery. An inquest was held by Coroner Paul Donahue, but the identity of the woman remains a mystery. Scattered around the place of death were numerous beer bottles. The wound was possibly inflicted by one of these, as there was no other weapon nearby. The crime was probably committed many hours, possibly 2 days before it was discovered. 10th Negro woman is found murdered. The remains of a murdered unknown Negro woman were found Sunday just off of the Beltline, east of Grand Park. They were lying within 200 yards of where a similar crime was committed about 2 or 3 months ago. Both women were slain in the same manner, struck in the head with some heavy instrument, and the throat was cut. This is about the 10th Negro woman to be mysteriously murdered in the outskirts of Atlanta during the past 12 months. Detective Starnes is investigating the murder. May 29th, Atlanta Constitution. Negro woman killed, no clue to slayer. Was found with throat cut near home. Her throat cut with a jagged edge. Betty Belly Walker, a Negro cook, was found dead yesterday morning, about 25 yards from her home, 22-8 Gabarty Street. There is not clue to the murderer, according to the inquest held by Coroner Donahue. The woman cooked at 191 Cooper Street and left there Saturday night for her home. Her sister started a search for her Sunday morning when her bed was found empty and the murdered body was discovered in an old field near the house. Now let us all pause for a second and reflect on the horror of the possibility of one of us having to discover our deceased sibling's body murdered near the home where we live. Atlanta, Georgia, and the news. February 20th, 1911, another Negro woman is found murdered, her throat cut from ear to ear and lying within a few yards of the spot where another Negro woman met a similar fate less than 2 weeks ago. Mary Walker, cook for policeman Andrews, was found dead early Sunday morning in a secluded spot at the end of Arthur Street, Pittsburgh. A number of Negro women have been mysteriously murdered in the outskirts of Atlanta during the past few months, and the police believe a regular Jack the Ripper is operating here. In nearly every instance, the murders have been similar, the victim's throat being cut. Robbery is believed to be the motive for the murders. Whether the Walker woman had been robbed, however, could not be told. At the time she was slain, she was on her way from Officer Andrews' home in Cooper Street to her own home at 228 Garibaldi Street. Police Sergeant Luck and Policeman Wagner and G. Allen Maddox are investigating the mystery. Now, this article claims that another woman had met a similar fate within a few yards as Mary Belly Walker, but the only murder that I can find was that of Rosa Rivers, which occurred 2 weeks ago. And in that case, she was a black woman who had been shot while walking with her sister, and she was not murdered within a few yards away from Mary Walker's house. Atlanta Constitution, July 17th, 1911. Addie Watts, a Negro woman, was found dead yesterday morning near the corner of DeKalb Avenue and Cross Street with her head mashed in with a coupling pin and her throat cut. She had been dragged from the side of the street almost to the railroad bank, which is very steep at this point. It is thought that her murderers intended to let the train mutilate her body in an effort to hide the crime. John Daniels, a Negro man, was arrested by detectives Hero and Hollingsworth on suspicion of being connected with the deed. Atlanta, Georgian and the News. June 17th, 1911, was day of death for Atlanta's Negroes, of women in DeKalb Avenue, culminating in the cold-blooded murder of Addie Watts, a Negro woman who was found early Friday morning at the corner of DeKalb and Quad Street, with her throat cut from ear to ear and her skull crushed with a blow from with a coupling pin Thursday proved a day of desperate disaster for Atlanta's Negro population. Thursday morning, Sam Whitlock was fatally injured in a dynamite explosion at Bellwood Avenue crossing Thursday afternoon. Wash Kendricks was pitched headlong down an elevator shaft from the eighth floor of the new National Third National Bank building and crushed to a pulp. 2 hours later, Will Arnold and his brother were drowned in Germania Lake. Thursday night, Addie Watts was murdered, and a Negro, John Daniels, was held for complicity after a coroner's inquest. Atlanta Journal, June 17th, 1911. Another Negro was killed. Black butcher at work. Another Negro woman has been found murdered. Her name was unknown to patrolmen Stuyvesant and Garrett, who made a report on the matter to the detectives that are now working on the case. The woman's body was found early Friday morning by a clump of bushes at the corner of Quad Street and DeKalb Avenue. She had first been knocked on the head with a brick. Then a coupling pin was brought into play and her head badly battered. The murderer then slit his victim's throat and dragged her body into the bushes. Two arrests have been made in the case. On the account of the number of recent murders of Negro women, policemen advanced the theory that Atlanta has an insane criminal, something on the order of the famed Jack the Ripper. The body of Lizzie Wax, a Negro woman, was found in a clump of bushes at the corner of White and Norton Street yesterday morning about 11 o'clock by G. D. Maxey of 237 Matthew Street. Her throat had been cut and the body dragged some distance to secure a hiding place. Call Officer Posty made an investigation of the crime, but so far there is no clue to the murderer. For the past few weeks, every Saturday night has been marked by one or two brutal killings, the victims generally being a woman and the instrument a knife. Mean whiskey and cocaine are the probable causes. This is this is from the June 26th edition of the Atlanta Constitution. Atlanta Journal, June 26, 1911. Is Black Jack the Ripper slaying Negro women here? Six murdered Negro women found by Atlanta police in the past 6 months, all under same circumstances, apparently slain by the same hand. Police are baffled. The finding of a dead body of a Negro woman in the clump of bushes near the corner of White and Lawton Street on Sunday morning marks the sixth chapter in a series of mysterious murders. In one instance, the crime occurred on a Thursday night, but five consecutive Saturday nights have been marked by the murder of a Negress. With one exception, the murdered women have been stabbed to death and their throats have been cut from ear to ear. The murders have been done in highways in widely separated sections of the city, but in each instance, the body of the dead woman had been dragged from the roadways by her slayer and deposited in bushes or ditches not far from the scene of the crime. The women have all been young. The crimes have naturally been attributed to a person of their own race. Several of the murdered Negresses have been employed as domestics in the homes of white people and were considered good, hard-working women by both races alike. The mysterious series of crimes have baffled the police. It has always been several hours after the murder, and sometimes several days, when the bodies have been discovered. The detectives have consequently been forced to work upon cold trails and have had little success. In one of the cases, two arrests have been made by the Atlanta police. Addie Watts, a woman with the same surname as the victim of Saturday night, was murdered some time ago. Detectives working on the case made two arrests, and both men were bound over from the recorder's court, charged with the crime. It is not the theory that both men are the authors of the crime, but that it lies between them, and the evidence in both cases was circumstantial. Two men saw one of the incarcerated Negroes talking to the victim a short time before the crime is thought to have been committed, while in the other case it is shown that the man under arrest was the sweetheart of the dead woman and that he had some trouble with her a few nights before her death. Several of the police have advanced the theory that the murders have been committed by the same man and that the similarity of the crimes bears out this theory in a measure. In the event the theory is correct, it appears that Atlanta police have to deal with a criminal of the dusky who is suffering with a peculiar species of insanity on the order of the mania of the Jack the Ripper, the infamous criminal of a generation ago. The murderer is so cunning in his bloody work that after every crime, the police found themselves helpless, for not even the most insignificant of clues can be found. Atlanta Constitution, June 2nd, 1911. The theory that a Negro Jack the Ripper is abroad in Atlanta was given substance last night when a man slashed the throat of Lena Sharp, a mulatto woman, killing her in the vicinity of 24 Hanover Street, and afterwards stabbed her 20-year-old daughter, Emma Lou, another mulatto who had gone on a search for her mother. Lena Sharp left her home at 24 Hanover Street, a Negro settlement, last night about dusk, stating she would return after going to a nearby market. When she failed to appear within an hour, her daughter Emma Lou became uneasy and left for the market where she thought to find her mother. She was told at the establishment that her mother had not been there during the night. The girl then started home, and on her way she was confronted by a Negro man who she describes as tall, black, broad-shouldered, and wearing a broad-brimmed black hat. "How do you feel this evening?" he is claimed to have said. Being afraid of him and remembering the death of Addie Watts, a mulatto girl who was recently killed in the same vicinity, she answered that she felt very well and tried to go on her way, but the Negro blocked her path. "Don't be afraid. I never hurt girls like you." And before she could move, the black stabbed her in the back, and as she alleges, with a laugh, ran away in the darkness. She screamed for help, and a large crowd of Negroes gathered, removing her to the house where her condition is reported as dangerous. A large party of Negro men walking in the vicinity of the railroad tracks near Hanover Street shortly afterwards stumbled over the prostrate form of Lena Sharp. A light revealed a huge gash in her throat, and her head lay in a pool of blood. The body was removed, and an inquest will be held today. Detectives who immediately put on work on the case are of the opinion that the same Negro who stabbed Emma Lou Sharp killed her mother and also killed Addie Watts in the same section a week or so ago. The manner in which Lena Sharp was killed last night corresponds exactly with the wounds on the and the Watts girl's body. It is also the belief that it is the same monster who has been killing the many negresses throughout the city in the past few weeks. The description given out by the Sharp girl has been broadcast among the police force, and efforts are being put forth to capture the monster who has struck terror to the mulatto negresses of Atlanta's colored population. Atlanta Journal, July 2, 1911. Black Jack the Ripper slays another negress. Six consecutive murder on Saturday nights. Seventh in the past 6 weeks, reported last night when two Negro women were attacked and one was killed. The mysterious Black Jack the Ripper, whose slayings of Negro women has been recorded on each Saturday night for the past 5 weeks, slew another last night. He attempted to claim two victims. One has survived, and from her the police have a small clue, a description. Lena Sharp, a 40-year-old negress, was the blacks' victim last night. There is slight chance for the recovery of Emma Lou Sharp. the dead woman's 20-year-old daughter, who was with her when they were attacked. According to the survivor of the six Saturday night's tragedy, neither she nor her mother had ever seen their assailant until he stepped out upon them from behind a clump of bushes on Seaboard Avenue near Hanover Street. He struck the mother over the head with a brick. As the mother was felled, the murderer commenced slashing the daughter with a knife, inflicting such serious wounds that the police surgeons at Grady Hospital do not expect the woman to survive. Loosing herself from the frenzied grasp of the maniac, who had not spoken a word during the attack, the negress ran several steps and then, screaming at the top of her voice, fell to the ground, so weakened from the drain of blood pouring from the several wounds that she fainted. Then evidently the negro turned his attention to the prostrate body of the elder negress. Using the knife in the same manner in which it had been used on each of the victims on the five previous occasions, he slit the woman's throat from ear to ear. Emma Lou says that her fainting spells were momentary and that she had just opened her eyes when the murderer, whom she describes as a giant, well over 6 feet in height, with a tremendous breadth of shoulders and exceptionally strong and snooty arms, was leaning over her, his knife drawn back. She was saved, she says, by the sound of running steps, and when several men, attracted by her screams, came running towards the scene of the murder, expecting every fraction of a second to draw her last breath. She watched the murderer as he listened, intent upon the noise made by the rescuers. Finally, kneeling above her with the long knife, he seemed to forget her, the negress said, and remained in the same position for several seconds. Then, like a flash, he was gone in the darkness, and a second or so later, several men were on the scene. Almost immediately after the crime, police headquarters was notified. While the ordinary Negro murder attracts little attention, the police department was upon high alert last night, doubtfully expecting a repetition of the long series of crimes which baffled every effort of the detectives. When news flashed over the wire to police headquarters, four detectives and two corps officers jumped into the automobile patrol and were rushed on the scene. Dogs were secured, placed on the track of the vicious maniac. At a late hour, their efforts had proven without success. Coroner Donahue, when notified of the murder, hastened to the scene. It is the work of the same man, he said, even before his investigation had been completed, and there seems to be little doubt that the fellow tried a double crime on a single night. The coroner echoed the theory of a number of the police who had been working on the other murders. The sharp woman, while the six of the Saturday night victims, was the seventh Negro woman to be mysteriously murdered in the past 6 weeks, one having been slain on Thursday night 3 weeks ago. The survivor, in describing the Negro, who is believed to be a maniac, stated that he was well dressed, entirely in black. His skin was very black, she said. As we can see, there are two different versions of this attack in the Atlanta Constitution and the Atlanta Journal. The Atlanta Constitution stating that the Ripper had approached Emily Sharp, when she was by herself looking for her mother and had attacked her after trying to engage her in conversation, whereas the Atlanta Journal states that both women were together when they were assaulted and that the Ripper had not said a word to any of them. The both newspapers agree on the description of the Ripper as being dark-skinned, tall, and dressed in all black clothing with a broad-brimmed black hat. At this point, newspapers all over the United States started posting articles on the Atlanta Ripper. Information printed was often inaccurate and sometimes at odds with the information printed in their local Atlanta paper. Following papers are from the Washington Post, Knoxville, Tennessee's Journal and Tribune, and the New York Times. The article from the July 3rd, 1911 edition of the New York Times reads, "Eight victims now of Atlanta Ripper, mulatto women slain and mutilated on 8 consecutive nights. Negroes are in terror. Woman who escaped described assailant as large black man, neatly dressed." Special to the New York Times. Atlanta, Georgia, July 2nd. The eighth weekly victim of Atlanta's Jack the Ripper came to her death Saturday night at the same hour and in almost identically same manner in which the seven mulatto women were killed. The eighth victim is Lena Sharp, aged about 40 years old. The woman was found with her head almost severed and her body horribly mutilated. Soon after, the daughter of the dead woman, who had gone in search of her, was attacked by a Negro whom she had never seen before. The daughter too was badly cut, but managed to make her escape, and it is thought she will recover. She describes her assailant as a large black man, powerfully built and neatly dressed. She asserts that he spoke to her and attempted to engage her in conversation. She took fright, she says, and as she started to run, was stabbed in the back. The police are more than ever mystified and are working in the dark. Meantime, the entire Negro population has become terrorized. Tonight, there are a few Negro women on the streets. Negro preachers have taken the murders for a text, and their congregations, always emotional, have been worked up into a state of religious frenzy. Negro cooks and housemaids are refusing to work after dark in cases where they have any distance to go to their homes afterwards. Killings of Negroes by Negroes are frequent enough on Saturday nights when blind tiger whiskey has been flowing freely, and if the murders had been the ordinary kind, even a series of them would have caused little stir among the blacks. The 8 killings of the 8 past weeks appear to be the work of a madman as methodical and cunning as the Jack the Ripper, whose gruesome murders in the Whitechapel district over 20 years ago startled the world. The Atlanta Ripper seems to possess some knowledge of anatomy. The first stroke is always in the fatal spot, and death and dealt out with absolute certainty. It is afterwards that the carving up of the victims, always in the same region of the body, begins. The woman is then left to welter in her blood in some dark and obscure alley. Sometimes the crime has not been discovered until Sunday morning. It appears that the murder is not committed after the accomplishment of the crime for which Negroes are so frequently lynched. Invariably, the victims have been good looking, neatly dressed, and physically attractive. More than one of them has received education in one of the many schools for Negroes founded by philanthropic white people at the North. Not in a single instance has an out black woman has been murdered in the manner described, and the word has gone forth among them that they are safe. It would seem that all of the Negroes have been killed with the same instrument, a razor or a very sharp knife, such as surgeons use, save in one instance the throat was cut from ear to ear, and the wound was clean. No stab marks were evident. All wounds were made as if the victim had been seized suddenly, head held back, and blade drawn swiftly in a horizontal direction. The jugular vein was in each case completely severed, and death must have been all but instantaneous. The murderers had not been confined to one part of the city, but have been widely separated. Each Saturday night, a new spot has been selected. Atlanta Constitution, July 4th, 1911. Reward is offered for Jack the Ripper. In an attempt to apprehend the slayer of Lena Sharp, a mulatto negress who was killed in the vicinity of Hanover Street Saturday night, L. L. Lee, a prominent Negro undertaker, has offered a reward for $25 for the apprehension of the murderer, who is also thought to have killed six other Negro women within the past month. Lee also asks the aid of other Negroes in raising the reward fund. He thinks that if rigid efforts are put forth among his race, these weekly murders will be quickly put to an end and the perpetrator caught. Detectives, as it is known, are of the firm belief that it is the same person committing each crime. Emmylou Sharp, a daughter of Lena Sharp, who was almost killed on the same night of her mother's death, gave a partial description of the Negro man who attacked her. With this description, the police and many Negroes hoped to run the fiend down within a short while. On July 6, 1911, the Atlanta Georgian and the News reported on the arrest of a pedophile named Henry Williams for the sexual assault and robbery of three black girls. The article states that the Fulton County Police were investigating the possibility that he was Atlanta's Ripper. Negro held in tower believed to be Ripper, accused of attacking three small Negro girls and having confessed to the crimes. Henry Williams, a Negro held in the tower, is believed by the police to be Jack, the Black Jack the Ripper, who is responsible for the number of mysterious murders of Negro women during the past 12 months. While no tangible evidence has yet been fastened on him in the murder cases, circumstances connected to the assaults lead to the theory that he is the murderer. Chief Rowan of the county police and detectives are making a thorough investigation of the Negro. His arrest closely followed his attack on a Negro girl near Peachtree Road Wednesday night. He chased, he was chased and caught by conductor M. Tyson and motorman R. D. Childers of of a Buckhead car to whom the girl reported the crime. The Negro boarded this car after the girl had told the motorman and the conductor, and realizing that he was suspected, leaped to the ground and fled. He was captured after a chase of about a mile. When the car was passing the Grand Opera House, the Negro again jumped off and was again caught. He was sent to he was sent to the police station by policeman Ed McWilliams and later transferred to the tower. Two of his victims identified him Wednesday night, and a third one saw and identified him Thursday morning in the tower. In addition to assaulting the girl of Wednesday night, Williams robbed her of $5.27. The money was found hidden in his shoe. July 8th, 1911, the Atlanta Journal. Will Jack the Ripper claim eighth victim this Saturday? Police are on the lookout for repetition of periodic mania of mysterious black who has killed several Negro women in past 7 weeks. Lena Sharp, daughter of the seventh victim of Atlanta's Jack the Ripper, has positively claimed that Henry Williams, the Negro now in the tower, charged with attacking little Negro girls, is not the man who killed her mother last Saturday night and subsequently attacked her. The police now know that the Ripper is not behind bars, and consequently, the officers at police headquarters confidently predict that he supposed maniac will claim another victim Saturday night. For the past 7 Saturday nights, a negress has been brutally murdered, presumably by the same person, and the police and the coroner are waiting for the call which will mark the passing of the eighth victim. The operations of the mysterious Negro have all been in different parts of the city, so the police have no idea in what locality they might secret officers during the early part of Saturday night in an effort to prevent another murder. Coroner Paul Donahue, who has held inquests over the bodies of each of the Negro's victims, states that while a number of Negro women have been killed in the city, the work of the Ripper seems unmistakable. Other mysterious murders have occurred, he said, where women have been the victims and no clue to the slayer was ever unearthed. But the dead bodies found each Saturday night for such a long period have been the work of the same maniac. A peculiar cons- a, capu- a peculiarity concerning the crimes of the Negro is that all of his victims have met their deaths on Saturday nights. From the consecutive manner in which the crimes have been committed, the police believe that it has now become a mania of the man to murder a woman each Saturday. It's coming, says a veteran officer Saturday morning. The Negro will kill a woman before midnight Saturday. The body may not be found during the evening, but the crime is certain to be committed. He'll kill one too many someday, continued the veteran, and then he will swing unless a mob of his own race, composed of his own race, get him before the police. What I found interesting about this article is that it suggests that the police were considering using undercover officers to catch the Ripper, but were having difficulty because he was striking in different locations around the city. The journal's prediction came true as the Ripper would be prowling for another victim that night. This is from the July 9th, 1911 edition of the journal. Jack the Ripper foiled in eighth attempt Saturday. Atlanta's Black Jack the Ripper was foiled in his attempt to claim an eighth victim Saturday night. The terror in which all Negresses are forced to walk the street alone have been thrown by the seven consecutive Saturday night murders of Negro women is responsible for the escape of Mary Adele, 22 years of age, a cook. Mary is employed by W. M. Seltzer, who resides at the corner of North Jackson and 4th Street. She left the residence about 8:30 Saturday evening and had walked only half a block down Jackson Street when she heard a low whistle. She thought it was another servant who met her who often met her at this dark alleyway and stopped for a second. Then she jumped, was coming stealthily towards her. From the shadows was a Negro man, tall, black, and well built, and moving with a cat-like tread. The negress remembered the many recent crimes, she said, the moment she saw the man coming towards her, and she rushed back to Mr. Seltzer's residence. The frightened girl was screaming as she ran, and Mr. Seltzer went through the front porch to meet her. Before before she had finished telling of the cause of her fright, he rushed back into the house and seized his revolver. Running to the alley, Mrs. Seltzer found the man, seemingly undisturbed, standing in the alley, pointing the revolver at the would-be assassin. Mrs. Seltzer commanded him to hold up his hands. Instead, the Negro turned and ran like a flash down the alley and disappeared in the lot where a vacant house stands. Mr. Seltzer then returned to his house and phoned police headquarters. Officers Palmer, Johnson, Webb, Gorman answered, riding their motorcycles to the distant residence in 4 minutes. They searched the alleys and other hiding places in the vicinity for half an hour, put failed to find any further trace of the criminal. Officers declared that from the descriptions given by both the white man and his servant of the Jackson Street Negro, that he must be the same man who killed the short woman last Saturday and then attempted to murder her daughter. Her daughter. The Atlanta Constitution also reported on this attempted murder. This is from the following article. A condition of intense excitement prevailed among the colored women of city last night when the ninth consecutive victim of Atlanta's Jack the Ripper was due to have been slaughtered. At police headquarters, the the force was figuratively on tiptoe, and if a murder had been reported, officers would have been on the spot on record time. About 8:30 came a telephone call that Jack had assaulted a Negro woman at Jackson and 4th Streets, and four call officers, Johnson, Gorman, Webb, and Palmer, were off like a flash on their motorcycles. The call had come from W. M. Seltzer of 527 North Jackson Street, secretary of the Railway Postal Clerks Investment Association. His servant, Mary Yadell, 22 years old, had returned screaming to his house with information that a man tried to attack her in the alley. She had left her work but a few minutes before and proceeded up Jackson Street to the alley where someone was standing in the shadows. Thinking that it was one of her friends, she accosted the person. "Throw up your hands, I want you," cried the supposed friend, whereupon the girl fled, frightened half to death. Mr. Seltzer telephoned for the police and then proceeded to the alley with his revolver. On his coming, the Negro made a racket from one end of the alley to the other and disappeared. A search of the neighborhood failed to locate him. After the occurrence, the Negro was afraid to venture home, and the other darkies of the section were thrown into a state of near panic. Their employers used every means to reassure them, and the excitement soon subsided. There are a couple of differences between the Journal's account and the Constitution's account. First and foremost, the Constitution claims that the person had spoken to Mary Adele and to ask and told her to take her clothes off because he wanted her, whereas the Journal says that the person had not spoken a word, had just run up to her quietly. Also, the Journal says that Mr. Seltzer immediately ran towards the alley, whereas the Constitution says that he telephoned to the police first and then proceeded to the alley. July 10th, 1911, Atlanta Constitution. For Jack the Ripper, Negroes offer reward. Before a large and representative audience at the First Congressional Church Colored last night, resolutions were presented and endorsed deploring the recent wave of crime resulting in the murdering of colored women. The resolutions called upon the members of the race to use to the utmost their influence to crush out every form of evil within the race and to cooperate with the officers of the law in apprehending the criminals. Reward was offered for the apprehension of the criminal who is doing havoc among the colored women, and the authorities were requested to use Negro detectives to assist in this special effort. The resolutions were signed by P. A. Allen, M. A. Thomas, and W. L. W. Wimby. From the Charlotte News, a North Carolina paper dated July 9, July 11, 1911. Negroes to apprehend the Black Jack the Ripper, Atlanta, Georgia, July 11th. In efforts to suppress the sporadic outbreaks of a veritable Black Jack the Ripper who, for 7 weeks past, has killed a Negro woman each Saturday night, except on the last, when he was foiled in the attempt. The Negroes of Atlanta have taken up the work of apprehending the Negro, and every effort will be made to take him into custody. Negro detectives will aid white men in the search, and many think that it will be a matter of only a short while before the murderer is apprehended. Atlanta Negroes will pay a handsome reward to anyone who catches the bloodthirsty Negro who has terrorized every Negro section during the past several weeks, and the entire city is watching the search with evident interest. Atlanta, Georgia, and the news. July 11th, 1911. Unknown slayer kills his seventh. Unidentified Negro woman is found in Southside with throat cut. No clue to the murderer. Black Jack the Ripper, who usually works Saturday night, 2 days late. Tuesday morning, about 7 o'clock, Will Broglin, a Negro laborer, was passing the point where a Southside trunk sewer intersects the newly graded Atlanta Avenue leading from Capitol Ave to Grant Park when he noticed traces of a scuffle in the soft dirt and a trail of something being dragged. He followed the trail and discovered the body of a young Negro woman, evidently the victim of a murderer. App investigation showed that the woman's throat had been cut, and straight away it was apparent that Black Jack the Ripper was at his work again. Broglie was working for O. L. Sweeney, who is making cuts and fills for the new thoroughfares now being open in the immediate section. He notified the foreman of his job immediately, and the latter telephoned the information into police headquarters as quick as possible. Corps Officer James Doyle was sent to the scene. Detective Black, who lived nearby, was also notified, as was policeman Arthur. The crime was committed at a point where Connolly Street, if extended, would intersect Atlanta Ave south of the latter street. A dirt fill is being made while a ditch runs almost parallel to this fill on the east side. To all appearances, the man who did the killing felled his victim with a rock, dragged her some 5 or 6 paces, and stabbed her in the neck. She was then dragged a few paces further and thrown into the ditch. Officers were practically at sea, though one or two clues were picked up. The woman's shoes were missing, and tracks of the supposed slayer were traced down the ditch a short way and then across a small field of corn. These crossed the new field, and from there further trace could not be found. No neighbors knew her. Within a half an hour, the news had spread, and both Negroes and whites from the surrounding district flocked to the scene. From Summer Hill, a Negro settlement a short distance away, they came in droves, yet not a single one could be found who would admit knowing the victim. None knew anything of where she worked or what she could have been doing in this desolate place. Rumors were afloat that someone saw a man leading a woman by the arm in that direction about dark, but efforts to trace it ended fruitlessly, and if any really knew anything about the case, they kept the knowledge to themselves most guardedly. From all appearances, the crime was the work of the same man who has been slaying women in different parts of the city for several weeks. The woman's head was almost severed from her shoulders. From the tracks and traces to be seen, when the officers arrived, it was evident that some sort of struggle had taken place. A side comb which the victim wore was found near her, while another was found across on the other side of Atlanta Avenue. In one place, a rock weighing possibly 2 pounds, covered with blood, and a short distance away, a large pool of blood where the stabbing probably took place. The seventh victim. That this brings the total of Negro women who have been mysteriously murdered within the past 6 or 7 weeks, up to seven, while another narrowly escaped the same fate at the hands of, of a man who is supposed to be the one who committed the other crimes. On the night of July 1st, Lena Sharp, a middle-aged Negro woman, was killed near Hannibal Street and the Seaboard tracks, while her daughter Emma Lou was badly slashed the same night, a short distance away.
The Saturday night before Addie Watts was killed in the same section, the assassin missed set last Saturday night, but only delayed his work 2 days. The latest victim is a slender mulatto woman of medium height and apparently about 20 years of age. Coroner Donahue arrived a short time after the body was found, but announced that he would not hold the inquest until Wednesday. The body was removed to an undertaken establishment where it would be prepared for burial as soon as it can be identified.
This article is from the front page of the Atlanta Journal, dated July 11th, 1911. Eighth victim is claimed Bloody Jack the Ripper. Negress found on Atlanta Avenue near Martin Street. Her throat cut from ear to ear. Police say crime is the unmistakable work of the Ripper, who has terrorized Negro population. This photograph shows several young white males at the crime scene. Underneath the photograph it says, "Seen near junction of Atlanta Avenue and Martin Street where Jack the Ripper claimed eighth victim Monday night." Foiled in his daring attempt on Saturday night, Atlanta's homicidal maniac, dubbed Jack the Ripper by the police, claimed his eighth victim on evening, Monday evening, as the Ripper claimed a victim on 7 consecutive Saturday nights. The police were of the opinion that Monday night's affair was simply an ordinary Negro murderer, but a casual examination of the body of the negress and the surrounding scene showed the unmistakable hand of the big black maniac whose series of crimes terrorized Atlanta's Negro population. The latest addition to the long list of crimes attributed to the Ripper was the murder of a negress on Atlanta Avenue near Martin Street and at the intersection of the New Arm Street sewer. White men working on this sewer going to the job early Thursday or early Tuesday morning found near the roadway a large pool of blood. Tracking the blood for a few feet, they came upon the body of a Negro woman. Officer Doyle, one of the first of the many police to reach the scene, made a quick examination of the ground and was immediately convinced that the murder was the work of the Ripper. While upon Atlanta Avenue, the woman had been felled to the ground with a blow of a blunt instrument. Her skull was fractured by the blow. The unconscious form had then been dragged a distance of 15 feet from the road. There, the victim's throat was slit from ear to ear in exactly the manner in which the operation was performed in the numerous other cases. Then the body was dragged about 15 more feet more and left in a little gully well outside of the road. Every movement in the crime of Monday evening corresponds to the moves in the series of Saturday night crimes. For 7 consecutive Saturdays, a Negro woman was murdered by an unknown maniac. In every instance, a negress was knocked in the head with a blunt instrument, twice found to be large rocks, and then the bodies were dragged from the roadway where the woman's throat was cut, all in the same manner. Their throats having been cut, the bodies were always dragged a bit further and carelessly thrown out of sight of the scene of the first blow. The series of crimes was broken on last Saturday night, principally through the terror into which Negro women had been thrown by the maniac's work. The Ripper was stationed in a darkened alley on North Jackson Street at about 8:30 o'clock, the usual time of his murders.
he attempted to attack a young servant girl, but she was wary, realizing it was Saturday night and the Ripper was prowling. The Ripper described, "The Ripper has been twice seen. The first time was Saturday 2 weeks ago when he killed a seamstress named Sharp. On this occasion, he tried to claim two victims on the same evening and was seen by the murdered woman's daughter, who had escaped after he tried to knock her down. The man was then described as very tall, well over 6 feet in height, rather heavy, and of a coal black color. On the second occasion, he was seen by his intended victim on last Saturday and by her employer, a Mr. Seltzer, who rushed to her rescue when she screamed. Few Negro murders in Atlanta have created more intense excitement than the discovery of Monday evening's crime. 20 minutes after the woman's body was found on Tuesday morning, a crowd of more than 100 people had gathered around the body. The crowd kept increasing until it had reached a, probably half a thousand when the coroner arrived shortly before 9 o'clock. A quick examination of the scene and of the body of the murdered woman convinced Coroner Paul Donahue that Jack the Ripper had buried his dead and caught another victim. The coroner was one of the first officials in the city to realize the series of Negro murders was the work of a single man, and for a number of weeks he has been working on that theory, but like the police, he has failed to unearth any clue which might lead him to the capture of the fiend. So exercised over the remarkable crimes are the Negro citizens of the city that they have offered a substantial reward for the capture of the criminal, maybe ninth victim, while the coroner and many of the police are convinced that the woman killed on Monday night is the Ripper's eighth victim. Many believe she is the ninth victim. Approximately 5 weeks ago, while the series of Saturday night murders of Negro women was unbroken, a Negress was found murdered on DeKalb Avenue on Friday morning, the crime having been committed before. Like the others, this woman had been knocked in the head and her throat had been cut. But several minor points about the murder led the police to the theory that it was done by another. In the other cases, the officers are convinced that the slain women had probably never seen their murderer. The news that the Ripper had stalked Monday evening caused an unusual activity at police headquarters on Tuesday morning, and not only the call officers were rushed to the scene, but a brace of detectives as well were put on the job. In addition, several patrolmen have been detailed as plainclothes men to work on the case. Each murder causes additional efforts on the part of the police, but their work brings them to nothing, as after working for days on the series of crimes, they find themselves helpless. They find themselves without a clue, and then the Ripper bobs up in another part of the city, and another woman dies. With a single exception, the 8 victims of the Ripper's insatiable thirst for the sight of human blood has been young Negro women, and in 6 cases, they were bright mulattoes. With one exception, the slain women have been hard workers and generally respected by both races alike. The character of the victims is largely responsible for the indignation at the murders, which has been so evident among the better class of Negroes. The body was identified during the day Tuesday as that of Sadie Howley, a young woman employed at the Guffman Steam Laundry. The Negress had always
bore an excellent reputation, according to the information given Coroner Donahue. The inquest over the body will be held at Cox Undertaking Establishment on Wednesday morning, and the coroner hoping that before that time he will be able to gather additional information about the crime. The Atlanta Constitution also published an article on this case the following day, titled "Reign of Crime Grips Atlanta, Police Defied, Homes Are Robbed, Negro Women Slain, and No Arrests Are Made. Eighth Victim Taken by Jack the Ripper. Deeds of criminals grow bolder as helplessness of the police becomes more apparent. Panic-stricken Negroes offering rewards and asking aid of city and state officials. Negro held in suspicion. Henry Huff, a Negro laborer, 27 years old, was arrested yesterday by detectives Coker and McGill in connection with the murder of Sadie Hawley Monday night, the eighth victim of Atlanta's so-called Jack the Ripper. Huff was arrested at his home at Huff was arrested at his home, rear of 81 Brothwell Street, and when were taken into the station, his ragged trousers up to his knees were heavy with blood and soft dirt. He is said to have been seen with the woman at a late hour Monday night. Again hurling defiance at Atlanta's police department, Jack the Ripper has claimed his eighth victim, the latest of the cutthroat murders committed within the city limits within the past few weeks came to light yesterday morning when the body of Sadie Hawley, a Negro woman, was found on Atlanta Avenue near the South Side trunk sewer line. And with equal defiance and apparently at equal security for arrest, a gang of sneak thieves and burglars, which has thrown Atlanta's homes into consternation, continues unmolested to ravage where it wills. Deeds grow bolder. Neither Jack the Ripper on one hand, nor the gang of thieves on the other has let up for 1 week in their terrorizing crimes. In fact, the deeds grow bolder and bolder with each successful evasion from the capture at the hands of police and detective departments of the city. Atlanta sleuths, so far from capturing the cutthroat murderer, so far from obtaining a clue to lead to the arrest of any one of the thieves, have not even succeeded in making an arrest of anyone who even remotely might be suspected of having taken a part in in any of the crimes. The Negro is held on a suspicion. The police department has nothing to say in explanation of its inability thus far to cope with the situation, further than a simple declaration that it is doing its best. In the meantime, the Negroes, naturally panic-stricken, the 8 women of their race have been murdered in the cold blood as many weeks, are holding mass meetings and appealing to the governor, to the mayor, and to law-loving citizens to help them in capturing the guilty party or parties and to put a stop to this reign of bloody crime. The white people of the community, indignant over the robberies which have been of so frequent occurrence, aroused as well as over the murders which have served to intensify the servant problem, are turning to the police, to the mayor, and to the governor for a degree of protection which would ensure a reasonable amount of security in the home. Colored detectives wanted. The Negroes in a mass meeting at Pittsburgh held Thursday night asked that detectives of their own color
be employed to help running down the bloody cutthroat. Several rewards have been offered for the capture, or asking that something be done, something more than is apparently being done now. They are asking for something that will be effective. The body of Sadie Hawley, the latest victim, was found on Atlanta Avenue near the Southside Trunk sewer line. Her throat was cut and her head had been mashed with a large stone. A large crowd gathered, but none seemed to know the victim. No sign of a struggle. The murder was discovered by a Negro laborer, Will Brogdon, around about 7 o'clock. He was on his way to work when he noticed in a newly graded soft dirt signs of a struggle. Following the traces, he came to the body. Call officer Doyle was soon investigating along together with Detective George Bullard and Officer Arthur. Several clues were found, according to Chief Lampert, who gave which gave promise of yielding something definite. But so far no arrests have been made. The stone which was used as a weapon was found in a nearby field. The woman's shoes were missing and have not been found. The trail of the slayer could be traced only a short distance in the soft dirt. Murder is one of the series which has the police at sea and which is causing consternation throughout the Negro population. Meetings have been held in all the churches and the murderers denounced and rewards offered, but there seems to be no stop in the crimes. First one early in the year. Looking back over the murders, it is seen that they have not started recently, but only in the last 2 months have they gained such frequency and regularity as to attract universal notice. The first one, Negro woman murdered, throat cut by unknown persons, happened during the latter part of 1910. On February 19th, an unknown woman was found near Grant Park with her head crushed and throat cut. On January 22, Rose Trice had been killed near Gardner Street and the Southern Railway in the same manner. From June 19th, there has been one murder weekly, starting with Addie Watts, who was found near the railroad, her head mashed with a coupling pin and throat cut. On June 25 saw Lizzie Watts killed at White and Lawton Streets, her body hidden in a clump of bushes. Lena Sharp was murdered July 1st at 24 Hanover Street, and her daughter Emma Lou Stein. Emma Lou has given the only description that the police have of the man. The unknown, the unknown of Monday night completes the list. The present crime wave is not confined to the Negro section. Wave of crime. Wave of crime out in the best residences section of the city. A series of robberies which amounted to several $1,000s worth of fine jewels and glassware has been committed by sneak thieves and burglars. In some cases, citizens have been providing special guards for their home. Among the robberies which have taken place are Charles L. Gatley, $1,500; Charles A. Conklin, $500; George M. Brown, $300; J. G. Oxbley, $300; Howard Candler, $300, and others. The servant theory of the police has been dissipated by the sneak thief at the Oxbley home Monday morning, and it is generally admitted now that the robberies are the work of one gang. Whether they are black white or black, is not known. It is possible that the city has been invaded by a number of professional crooks who are making rich hauls. So far, there is no evidence to connect anyone with the robberies, and the police are at sea in regard to the burglaries. What reward offered? In hope of securing the arrest of the Ripper, Negro pastors of Atlanta have started a petition asking the governor and mayor to offer a reward for his capture. It is as follows. Within the last 2 years, 17 Negro women have been found murdered in this community as follows. April 5th, 1909, Della Reed found dead in a trash pile near 71 Watkins Street. September 7th, 1909, unknown found in Peachtree Creek. March 5th, 1910, Estella Baldwin, 725 North Jackson Street. Concussion of the brain. April 5th, 1910, Georgia Brown, 107 Martin Street, gunshot wound. April 6th, Maddie Smith, 141 Peter Street, gunshot wound. May 6th, 1910, Lavinia Austin, gunshot wound. May 22, 1910, Sarah Dukes, 110 Curran Street, gunshot wound. Francis Lampkin, 407 Foundry Street, gunshot wound. September 4th, 1910, Eliza Griggs, 28 Dover Street, gunshot wound. October 6th, 1910, Maggie Brooks, East Ellis Street, killed on Hale Street near West Point and Beltline. February 3rd, 1911, Lucinda McNeil, 23 Spencer Street, throat cut. May 3rd, 1911, Rosa Rivers, 122 Randall Street, shot. May 29th, Mary Walker, 228 Garibaldi Street, throat cut. June 15, 1911, Addie Watts, 30th Selman Street, throat cut. June 27, 1911, Lizzie Watkins, West Oakland Street, throat cut. July 2, 1911, Lena Sharp, 24 Hanover Street, throat cut. July 10, 1911, Sadie Hollis, killed on Gardner Street, throat cut. As far as we can ascertain, there has not there has been no convictions for any one of these crimes. This is from the same Atlanta Constitution newspaper titled Police Awakening Needed. Atlanta's appalling criminal record has been increased the past 2 days by the outrageous and wanton murder of another Negro woman and two flagrant and daring burglaries in the heart of well-populated residence sections. A dozen such murders and as many similar burglaries whose perpetrators are still at large would not complete the list of the past 2 months. The assassin who is engaged in this periodic and regular throat-cutting of hard-working servant women, and the marauder who does not hesitate day or night to invade centrally located homes and carry off valuables, if necessary, at the point of a pistol, are applying their vocations apparently in no awe of the police. It is said that no person commits a crime without leaving some clue to his identity. Certainly no criminal or ever absolutely covered his traces with a series of assassinations or burglaries. What is the matter with the Atlanta police that they have not found these traces and have not found the criminals themselves and locked them securely from further depredation? Is it indifference or incompetence? Is Atlanta in need of police awakening or of a police shakeup? This appalling criminal record makes it apparent that one or other is about due. In a communication published today, Reverend Reverend H. H. Proctor of the Congregational Church points to the reign of terror among the Negro women of the city, chiefly the servant women who have to go to work to their homes after dark as a result of the operation of this clumsy Jack the Ripper, who would long ago been have been in the toils of a live and efficient police. He bases his appeal not alone on the serious phase these assassinations have placed upon the servant problem, but chiefly upon the broad ground of humanity. He points out that the Negroes are practically helpless, helpless against the crimes of one of their own race. It is true. It is also true that held to the strictest accountability to the law, they are entitled to full protection equally with the foremost and most prominent citizens of Atlanta. It is the duty of the police to find the criminal and bring him to harmlessness and punishment. It is equally their duty to terminate the series of burglaries, none of which fortunately resulted in murder, only because the unarmed occupants of the homes have not so cornered the criminal that murder was his only way out. It is not sufficient to say we are working on the case. These are situations in results alone count. While we are working on the case, another woman's throat is cut, another house is robbed, perhaps at pistol point. Atlanta is becoming aroused over this thing, and people are approaching the point where they will demand results or know the reasons why. Assassins and burglars will continue to laugh at a somnolent police until they wake up and get to action. And if needed awakening is not soon forthcoming, there is little question that an incensed public will find an effective prod.
Atlanta, Georgian in the news. Two rippers held. Police getting busy. Coroner's jury thinks Huff is the slayer, and cops believe it is Henderson. Two Negroes, each suspected of being Jack the Ripper, are held prisoner at the police station. One of the suspects, Henry Huff, 27 years of age, living in the rear of Brotheren Street, who was arrested by detectives Osborne and Coker, was Thursday morning ordered by a coroner's jury to be held for further investigation by the grand jury for the murder of Sadie Howley, the latest victim of the Ripper, who was mysteriously slain Monday night near Atlanta Avenue. Todd Henderson, living at Hill Street and the Beltline, who was arrested Wednesday night by detectives George Bullard, is also suspected of this murder. Although he was not held by the coroner's jury, Henderson is being held by detectives and will be tried for the Holly murder Friday afternoon before Recorder Boyles. The arresting officers in each instance say that they have a strong circumstantial case against their respective prisoners. Should the recorder bind over Henderson, the grand jury then have to shift all of the evidence and determine which of the two suspects should be indicted for the murder. In addition to the murder of the Holly woman, detectives believe they will be able to fasten on Henderson the murder of Lena Sharp and the attempted murder of her daughter Emma Lou Sharp in Reynoldstown last Saturday night a week ago. Woman identifies him. When Emma Lou Sharp, who got a good look at the murderer, saw Henderson in the police station Wednesday night, she exclaimed, "That's the man." She later qualified this identification by remarking, "If he's not the right man, I'm badly mistaken." This identification was strengthened Thursday morning when George Brooks, a Negro living in Reynoldstown, near the scene of the Sharp murder, called at the police station and identified Henderson as the Negro he saw in the vicinity of the murder shortly after the crime had been committed. Henderson has also been identified as having been seen in company with the Hollywood woman Monday night about 11 o'clock, the night she was murdered. As to Huff, it has been shown that he was in company with the Holly woman Monday night. It was further shown that she was his sweetheart. One of the most damaging circumstances against Huff is the finding of blood spots on the lower part of his trousers. He was struck on the head in a pool room Monday night, he says, and insists the blood on his trousers came from this wound. Evidence was presented at the inquest, however, to show that the blood did not come from the wound in the head. Henderson, in denying Thursday morning that he is Jack the Ripper, remarked, "Gee, if I was Jack the Ripper, I sure would have begun on my wife, for she give me lots of trouble." Police trying hard with the purpose of increasing the efficiency of the police force. Chief Jennings Thursday detailed 8 policemen in plainclothes to do duty in the night hours, keeping a lookout for Jack the Ripper and other criminals and lawbreakers. Coincident with this detail, all the detectives who have been doing duty at night, with the exception of 2, have been changed to the day watch. Detectives Black and Harper will be on duty at night, but all other detectives will be on day work. The special clothes detail will go on duty at 7 o'clock at night and continue until morning. These plainclothes officers will work in different sections of the city, wherever it is thought they can furnish the greatest aid in preventing crime. The police department is handicapped seriously slow by a small slice, but even if we had more men, we could not stop crime. The police are doing the best they can under the circumstances. If we had a policeman on every block in the city, it would still be possible for murder and theft to be committed. Chief Jennings Thursday morning thus expressed himself in regard to the public censure of the police department growing out of the series of Jack the Ripper and other crimes. In the course of his remarks, the chief cited the celebrated Jack the Ripper sensation in London a number of years ago that attracted the attention of the world. The English Ripper. With the London Police Force and Scotland Yard, the finest detective organization in the world on the scene, said the chief, it was fully 2 years before the London Jack the Ripper was run to earth. And he was even bolder than this Atlanta murderer, for he claimed a victim almost every night, white women, and the murders occurred all in the same section of the city. In this instance, the crimes have been scattered all over the city, mainly in the outskirts, where we are unable to provide adequate police protection. Another thing, the police can't go out and pick up a criminal like this on the spur of the moment. Those who think that this can be done will gain a different view if they should try only if they should only try policing a little and try to clear up a mystery such as this. In every instance where one of these murders has been done, the murderer has not left the slightest clue. In several instances, it was several days before the victim was even identified, which of course seriously delayed the investigation. With absolutely no clue
on which to work, it is a difficult matter to land the slayer and get sufficient evidence to convict. We are doing the best we can and will continue to do so. The police department has been doing good work, and many murderers and burglars and other criminals have been brought to justice, as the record will show, and this has been done too with an inadequate force. Easy to avoid police. As it is now, the men have to cover large sections of territory, and each policeman certainly cannot be expected to be on all parts of his beat at the same time. With the extensive territory each policeman is required to cover, burglars and thieves have a cinch. It is possible for a burglar to rob several different places if he should choose so at one end of a beat before the policeman could get back from the other. We certainly need more men. There's no doubt about that. The chief then declared that the citizens themselves are largely responsible for the many burglaries and thefts because of the carelessness in leaving their homes exposed. He cited the fact that several residences have been robbed of late in broad daylight while members of the family were in the house. These robberies would not have occurred, said the chief, if we had more caution exercised in the protection of houses. More care on the part of the citizens themselves would aid ma- materially in thwarting thieves and criminals. There's a couple of things I would like to say about this article. First, the article mentions the use of plainclothes officers. If we remember, shortly before the attempted attack on Mary Yadel, the journal mentioned that the police were considering the use of plainclothes officers, but were having trouble because of the fact that the Ripper was striking in different locations of the city. The second time plainclothes officers was brought up was when the journal published an article about Sadie Howley's murder, in which they said that plainclothes officers were placed on this case. The Georgian article gives more details about this plainclothes assignment, saying that there was 8 men assigned to plainclothes duty and that they will be working from 7 in the evening to the next morning. The second thing I want to address is the chief's claim that the London Ripper was bolder than the Atlanta Ripper because he had killed a woman almost every night, white women, and the crimes of the London Ripper occurred in the same section of the city, whereas the Atlanta Ripper occurred in different sections of his city. It is not true that the London Ripper killed a woman almost every night. In fact, the Atlanta Ripper had by this time claimed more victims than London's infamous Jack the Ripper. The infamous Jack the Ripper of London has usually between 5 or 8 victims attributed to him, the most common being the Canonical Five, whereas the Atlanta Ripper had at least 8 to 10 victims attributed to him by this time. While it is true that the Atlanta Ripper killed all over Atlanta, several of his victims were killed in the same area. Detective George Bullard would later tell Ripper suspect Todd Henderson that a half a dozen Negroes had been killed around the area where Todd Henderson lived. The chief claims that it took the London police and the Whitechapel authorities 2 years to run their Ripper to earth or to bring him down. In fact, the London Ripper had only been active in the year 1888 and was never apprehended. Whereas by this point, the chief seems to ignore the fact that his own Ripper, the Atlanta Ripper, had been active since the early part of 1909. Now, I want to mention a couple of things about the two detectives that were involved in the Sadie Holly case, Detective John Black and Detective George Bullard. 2 years earlier, these two detectives were involved in a case where a young black man had been murdered. So this is from the November 4th, 1909 edition of the Atlanta Georgian. Killed by burglar, Negro shot at door of his cabin. Steve Morris, a Negro living in the rear of 204 Washington Street, was met at the door of his cabin when he was returning home Wednesday evening about 7 o'clock by a burglar who shot and instantly killed him. The shot attracted the attention of the family of C.S. Sargent who lived near. They went to the cabin and found a Negro lying dead on his doorsteps. Morris was 28 years of age. No clue to the identity of the burglar has been discovered. 10 days later, the same newspaper reported an arrest in the case, titled "Negro Robs 22 Homes, Killed Man." Frank Brooks, age 19, confesses to police. Cruelly confesses to one murder and 22 burglaries committed in Atlanta since October 1st. Frank Brooks, a 19-year-old Negro, occupies a cell at the police station. His series of self-admitted crimes showing him to be one of the most daring criminals bagged in this city in years. The murder is the killing on the night of November 3rd of Steve Morris, a Negro servant at the home of Miss Nettie Sargent, 204 Washington Street, principal of the girls' high school. Brooks was burglarizing the servant's house in the rear of the Sargent home when he was discovered by Morris, whom he promptly shot to death. Brooks was run to earth by detectives J.R. Black and George C. Bullard after one of the cleverest bits of detective work done in the local department in a long while. When Brooks entered the servant's house at the Sargent home, he first broke into the room occupied by the cook, a Negro woman. There he stole a new pair of shoes purchased from the store of R.C. Black in Whitehall Street. He then went around to the room of Steve Morris and broke in. Before he completed this job, Morris came to the door. The burglar immediately ran past Morris, who gave chase, and the latter suddenly turned and fired, killing the pursuer. The stolen shoes were the clue on which Detective Black and Bullard were set to work. Traced by a pair of shoes, ascertaining that the shoes were bought from Black's store, they requested from the employees there to let them know at once should they see the shoes again or hear anything about them. This pair was the only one of the particular number in stock. After several days, a negress came into the store, presented these same shoes, and said she wanted to exchange them for larger ones. Detective Sergeant Lamford was notified, and Detectives Black and Bullard hurried to the store, arrested the woman, and later her husband. The latter explained that he bought the shoes on the night of the murder from Frank Brooks on Decatur Street. Witnesses were produced who saw the sale made, and Brooks was finally found and arrested. This was Thursday. For hours, he protested that he knew nothing of the burglary. The detectives, however, confronted him with their evidence, and under the fire of questions on Friday, he confessed to a number of burglaries, but still denied the murder. Detectives were tireless in their efforts, however, and the prisoner eventually confessed his complete guilt. He then furnished the detectives a list of the 22 burglaries and told them that he had secreted his stolen booty in the home of a Negro woman at the rear of 67 Marriage Ave. There, the officers found several hundred dollars worth of stolen goods. When reminded that he would probably hang on the gallows, the Negro blandly replied, "I know it." Bu- Now, the reason why I bring up this case is because a lot of people, when I see videos about the Atlanta Ripper cases online, I see a lot of people comment saying that the only reason why these cases were not solved was because the victims were black and that the police didn't care. So I wanted to show a case where two of the detectives involved in the Ripper investigation solved the murder of a black person. The other reason why I brought up this case is because in this case, like the Sadie Harley case, a pair of shoes was stolen, but in this case, the pair of shoes was instrumental in leading to the capture of the offender. Now, this article is from the Atlanta Journal, titled "Police Must Stop Crime in Atlanta," says Mayor Wynn. A complete reorganization of the police department is the first thing that ought to be done when we get the commission government, declared Councilman Steve Johnson in a conversation with Mayor Wynn Wednesday morning. I don't know whether we'll get the commission government or not. I don't know that I favor it altogether. But that's neither here and there. We need the police department reorganized and put on a more efficient basis, and we need it badly. Councilman Johnson said that in his opinion, the department ought to have a young, active, vigorous man at the head of it. And the detective department ought to have at least a few real detectives in it, he said. The subject came up in connection with the discussion of the visit of a delegation of Negroes to the mayor to ask him that the city offer reward for the Jack the Ripper, the murderous Negro maniac who is thought to be guilty of killing 9 Negro women in the past 2 months, and who hasn't yet been caught. Carlos Manson, the chairman of the police board, Henry Jennings, the chief of police, and Newport Lamford, the chief of detectives, were requested to be in the mayor's office at 1:15 o'clock Wednesday afternoon for the purpose of conferring with the mayor in regards to the wave of lawlessness and crime which is sweeping over the city, and the apparent failure of the police and detectives to apprehend the guilty parties to show any result toward remedying the conditions. I'm going to find out what I can, said Mayor Wynn, why the police are unable to cope with the situation and why detectives have been unable to catch the criminals. A delegation of Negroes called on the mayor Wednesday morning and urgently asked him to offer reward for the supposed murderous maniac dubbed Jack the Ripper, who is thought to be the Negro who has murdered 8 or 9 Negro women in the past 2 months. Under the law, the mayor cannot offer a reward, but can recommend that the council appropriate a sum for this purpose, and he will probably do so. A delegation was headed by Henry A. Walker, former collector of the Internal Revenue in Atlanta, and Reverend J. A. Rush, pastor of the Central Avenue Methodist Church Colored. From the mayor's office, the delegation is understood to have gone to the chairman of the county commissions on a similar errand, and thence to the office of Governor Ho Smith. The mayor states that he appreciates the need for more men on the police force, but I also believe that they are incompetent men on the detective force, the mayor said. And it looks to me as if the police could certainly be do something to check the wave of lawlessness and crime. This is not the first time the Negroes have complained. I have a letter on my desk that came to me a month ago or more, setting forth practically the same facts. It looks as if the real criminals are getting away and none but the drunks and the disorderly conduct cases are feeling the strong hand of the law. I'm going to find out why the police department can't something, and I'm going to find out if they can't do something. Many signed petition, finding themselves helpless before the depredations of a maniac who leaves their women dead upon the streets with skulls smashed and throats cut, and finding the Atlanta police are unable to aid them in at least in detecting the perpetrators of such a notorious series of crimes, the Negro citizens of Atlanta have formed a petition which they are now circulating for the purpose of enlisting aid of the mayor of the city and the governor of the state in bringing the guilty parties to justice. The petition will be sent to Governor Smith and Mayor Wynne and asks that they offer a suitable reward for the arrest and apprehension of the criminals and reads as follows. Text of the petition. Within the the last 2 years, colored women have been murdered in this community as follows. April 7th, 1909, Della Reed found dead in trash pile near 71 Rankin Street. September 7th, 1909, unknown found dead in Peachtree Creek. As we mentioned before, this woman this woman in Peachtree Creek, her case was undetermined. They couldn't tell if she had committed suicide or been murdered or accidentally drowned. March 5th, 1910, Stella Baldwin, 735 North Jackson Street, concussion of the brain. April 5th, 1909, Georgia Brown, 167 Martin Street, shot. May 9th, 1910, Lavinia Austin, shot. May 23rd, 1910, Sarah Dukes, 119 Curran Street, shot. July 6th, 1910, Francis Lemkin, 407 Foundry Street, shot. September 4th, 1910, Maggie Brooks, East Ellis Street, killed on Hill Street. February 3rd, 1911, Lucinda McNeil, 92 Spencer Street, throat cut. May 8th, 1911, Rosa L. Rivers, 122 Randall Street, shot. May 29th, 1911, Mary Walker, 228 Gabardi Street, throat cut. June 15th, 1911, Addie Watts, 30 Selman Street, throat cut. June 27th, 1911, Lizzie Watkins, West Oakland Street, throat cut. July 2nd, 1911, Lena Sharp, Hannaford Street, throat cut. July 10th, 1911, Sadie Hollis, killed on Garnet Street, throat cut. As far as we can ascertain, there has been no conviction and a few, if any, arrests for one of these murders. We therefore most earnestly petition you to offer a suitable reward for the apprehension and conviction of these unpunished murderers who have produced a state of terror in this community. Respectfully yours, E. A. Carter, Chairman Pastor of the Friendship Bureau Church, E. H. Oliver, Pastor of the Warren Chapel M.E. Church, H. H. Proctor, First Congregational Church, C. H. Jackson, J. A. Rush, Pastor of the Central Methodist Church, C. M. Tanner, Pastor of the Bethlehem AME Church, H.W.B. Wilson, pastor of the Bowen M.E. Church, James Bryant, pastor of Wheat Street Baptist Church, Moses Amos, druggist, David P. Howard, and Son, undertakers. In addition to the following white citizens have signed their name to the petition, and more will probably do so as the paper which is being circulated by A. J. Rucker and J. A. Rush can be brought to their notice. Frederick Praxton, John W. Grant, John S. Owens, Wilmar L. Moore, Asa G. Candler being the one who helped build the Coca-Cola Company, W. G. Bullock, T. D. Mador, Reuben R. Arnold, and J. W. English, R. T. Iron, and James R. Gray. Negroes terrorized. The petition has been caused, of course, by the series of so-called Jack the Ripper murders, which have terrorized the Negro community and shocked with horror the entire Negro population by their gruesomeness and irregularity. But as has been seen, there has been by no means the only murders of Negro women in Atlanta in which the murderers have gone unpunished. The petition gives the name of 17 colored women who have fallen before the knife, gun, or bludgeon of the assassin within the last 2 years. Most of these victims have been hard working servant girls, and aside from the public horror in the presence of these continued crimes, their loss in a coldly practical sense is being felt by the white people as well as the Negroes in Atlanta. The Atlanta police have been called upon since November 10, 1910, to catch the assassin in 8 consecutive murder cases in which the individuality of the brute's work is believed by many to be unmistakable. The lunatic, for he must be, attacks his victims in open highways, leaving their bodies by the wayside, and still he is at liberty to add another to his list of victims. The detective force holds one man on suspicion. According to Chief Lanford, several clues have been found after the last murder, which give the promise of bringing something definite to light. So far, however, nothing has been brought forth. The murderer of the last victim left his tracks all about the soft dirt where the body could be found, but they could not be traced very far. The pitiable part about the whole situation is the effort that the Negro citizens are compelled to make to defend themselves when they find themselves unprotected by the city to which they pay taxes, partly for the purpose of maintaining an efficient police force. The Negroes held a mass meeting Pittsburgh Thursday night, asking that detectives of their own race be employed in the campaign for the arrest and conviction of the destroying element. Several rewards have been offered by the colored churches in the city for the arrest of the man or men involved, and the white people who have signed the petition now being circulated have expressed themselves willing, if it becomes necessary, to, to subscribe a reward offered as a further reward for his capture. The Negroes of Atlanta are asking, in the name of humanity, that something be done. Atlanta Constitution, July 13th, 1911. Negro Ripper is in the Toils, so police think. Todd Henderson, in many ways, answers to the description of the man. Governor is asked to offer reward. Chamber of Commerce adopts resolution introduced by John E. Murphy calling on the governor and mayor to take action looking to arrest a fiend. Negro servants are wild with terror. The state of mind of the Negro serving population throughout the city, especially of the Negro cooks who act as cooks in Atlanta's home, was shown last night when a half a dozen were thrown into panic and hysterics by a Negro man on the outskirts of the city. The colored women were frightened half to death, and people for hundreds of yards around were aroused by their screams and shrieks. They fled before anyone could reach them, and a Miss McAdams of 704 DeKalb Avenue reported the matter to the police. Spirited action was promptly taken at the station house, and Assistant Chief Jett, with Captain Mayo, set out for the scene of the trouble, while two corps officers on motorcycles were dispatched on the same errand. On DeKalb Avenue, between Pearl and Waddell Streets, the officers found that 6 Negro women, homeward bound and and had been paralyzed by the sudden apparition of a Negro man in a gloomy field. He was tall, wore a black hat, but was in shirt sleeves. Their minds filled with terrors of the past weeks. They fled precipitously, and the man also disappeared. The incident, so far as Jack is concerned, is regarded as a joke, but shows the point to which the fear of the darkies has come. Two Jack the Rippers, both suspected of the same murder, are confined in the police station. The latest arrest is Todd Henderson, 35 years of old, who last night identified by Emma Lou Sharp, who on Hanover Street was badly cut some weeks ago and saw her mother murdered by her side. The other man was arrested Tuesday, and there's much circumstantial evidence against him. His name is Henry Huff, and he is a thick set young Negro, 27 years old. The case against Henderson seems very strong. He has been wanted since the discovery of the murder, but successfully eluded the officers in spite of the efforts to locate him until yesterday afternoon when he was found in a Decatur Street near a beer saloon by Detective George Bullard, who's working on the case with Detectives Harper and Black. Identification not positive. Emma Lou Sharp was notified and appeared at the station house last night. She viewed Henderson and another Negro. She saw him in the full light and in the dark. She heard him speak, and her verdict was that he was the man to the best of her knowledge. Her identification was not positive, however, stated Chief Jennings, who was an interested observer. How are you getting along? Henderson was told to say, and as he spoke, the girl shrank back as if she recognized the voice that had threatened her at the time of her mother's murder. The partial identification of the sharp woman is greatly strengthened by that of a clerk in a grocery store near 24 Hanover Street, where the crime was committed, who saw Henderson.
Henderson the night on the murder. His identification was practically the same as Emma Lou Sharp. Jim Patton, a Negro who was in Cohn's Drug Store, corner of Pryor and Decatur Street, Monday night when Henderson went in, accompanied by the Holly woman, and made a small purchase. This was after 11 o'clock and is a strong link in the evidence. The Negro statements are verified by Dr. Cohn and one of the clerks. The circumstantial evidence is against Henderson is most strong, declared detectives last night. He was positively seen with the Holly woman after 11 o'clock Monday night, but has denied even knowing her. They say he has involved himself in a network of lies regarding his movement on the night of the crime and subsequent to it. A significant fact is that Henderson's shoe fits to the fraction of an inch the tracks left in the soft mud at the scene of the murder. Mr. Bullard, you ain't arrested me for nothing. I but lived out there where this woman was killed, had asserted Todd as he was taken from his cell last night by detectives to be carried upstairs for identification. If that was the case, Todd, answered Mr. Bullard, I would have gotten you long ago. A half a dozen Negroes have been killed within a mile of where you live. Henderson lives at the West Point Beltline crossing of Hill Street, near where Sadie Holly was found, with her throat cut and head crushed with a coupling pin, not far from the woods beyond Grant Park, where Unknown was murdered, and some little distance from the Negro section where two others met their fates. What this article does not mention is that Maggie Brooks also was slain at the intersection of West Point Beltline and Hill Street. Well, sir, You know, if I was going to kill anybody, I would have long ago killed my wife, continued the prisoner. Henderson has been in great deal of trouble on account of his wife, whom he has said to have cut up 2 or 3 times. When he was arrested, he was in a beer saloon spying on her while she paid a visit to a friend in the police station. Henderson fills very well the description given weeks ago by the sharp girl, a tall and powerfully built Negro, but his clothes, of course, are different. He works for various persons in town, sounding grass and such jobs, and makes good wages. Henry Huff, who was the first Negro locked up, was arrested at his home, rear of 81 Brothwyn Street, and the damaging fact against him was his blood-soaked and dirty trousers. He had a wound on his head, the result of a pool room fight, which he claimed caused the blood. Last night, Detectives Coker and McGill found in his right arm and the crook of his elbow a group of marks that are seemingly fingernail scratches. He claims that these are old marks. Circumstantial evidence has also been secured against them. The coroner's inquest over the body of Sadie Holly will be held this morning at 9 o'clock. Governor is petition, spurred to action by the ruthless slaughter of 17 Negro women in Atlanta and vicinity whose murders have gone unwhipped of justice. A large number of citizens, both white and colored, yesterday petitioned Governor Smith to offer rewards for the apprehension of the perpetrators of these crimes. The petition was circulated by H. Proctor and several other Negro ministers of the city, and they secured the signatures of many of the well-known members of their race. In addition to these, they had their petitions endorsed by such men as Asa G. Candler, Colonel J.W. English, Reuben R. Arnold, and many other prominent citizens of the city. General Clifford L. Anderson endorsed the petition as vice chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. The petition sets forth that within the past 2 years, 17 Negro women, given the names of 15 of them, have been murdered in this community, and that insofar as the petitioners have been able to ascertain, no convictions and few arrests have been made in any of these cases. It is shown that 7 of these murders of these Negro women have been committed this year. The police have attributed these murders to a Negro Jack the Ripper, and the petition is the direct outgrowth of his murderous attack on Negro women, which have been committed with startling regularity during the past few weeks. The governor received the petition Wednesday afternoon and has taken it under consideration. He will probably make some type of announcement regarding it Thursday. Chamber takes action. Chamber of Commerce has also taken cognizance of the murders. At the meet of the directors yesterday, a resolution was passed requesting the governor, mayor, and the city council to offer a reward for the arrest and conviction of the person known as Jack the Ripper. Mayor at a loss for solution. Just why the police have not been able to hold down the unusual number of crimes reported in the city in the past few weeks, why the detectives have not been able to apprehend the criminals, why the police are unable to cope with the situation is more than I can understand. But these things I'm going to find out is any way possible, said Mayor Wynne yesterday afternoon prior to a meeting called by him at which Carlos Mason, chairman of the police board, Henry Jennings, chief of police, and Newport Lanford, chief of detectives, were present. These officials were requested by the mayor to be present at his office at 1:15 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and at the time all were present. Exactly what transpired during the conference is unknown.
But according to Chief Jennings, the mayor merely wanted a report on what the police were doing. This said was give this the chief said was given after which the meeting was adjourned. The call meeting followed a visit by the delegation of the best Negro citizens of Atlanta, led by Reverend J.R. Rush, pastor of the Central Colored Church, and by Henry Ruckus, former collector of the Internal Revenue in Atlanta. They formed a committee chosen at the meeting of the Negroes of Atlanta to request the mayor and the governor offer reward for the perpetrators of the murders done upon many Negro women in the past few weeks. The mayor stated that under the law he could not offer a reward, but he could ask the council to make an appropriation for such a purpose. This he will do in the event the Negro is not captured before the council meets. Following the call at the mayor's office, the delegation visited the governor and then to the county commissioners, all of whom promised their aid in furthering the efforts to apprehend the authors of the many recent crimes. Mayor Wynne believes the police could do much more efficient work than they are doing now and is determined to stop some of the lawlessness even though he even though all cannot be ended. He states that the visit of the delegation of Negroes yesterday was not the first move made by the colored race to put an end to the lawlessness, as over a month ago he received a letter in regard to the matter. During the past few weeks, an unknown Negro maniac, diabolical in his cunning, has killed no less than eight Negro women and had made attempts upon two others. The police are unable to apprehend the madman, and the Negroes are living in a daily state of terror. Negro women are afraid to go out on the street at night, and servants refuse to work after dark if by doing so they are forced to go home after nightfall. To make an endeavor to end this state of affairs, the Negroes have held several meetings and at last drew up the following petition, which has been signed by many of the leading white citizens of Atlanta. This article from the Atlanta Constitution speculates on the possibility that the Atlanta Ripper may have been also a burglar. Titled Burglars Busy, Two Robberies. Jack the Ripper last night prepared for a fresh series of murders by laying in a stock of razors. The, the chief articles which attracted the attention of a Negro burglar at the home of James A. McCoy, 20 of White Street, late yesterday afternoon were two sharp razors. Although a search was made by the thief until he found them, passing through the slot gas meter on his way out, he secured several dollars in small change. Two other Negro burglars, perhaps the boldest on record, stole about 175 worth of clothes Friday night from Capitol Square from Harry G. Hall, who boards there. They entered the house by the front door and were surprised by the lady of the house. Not a whit feast, they secured access to the upstairs rooms on the story that they had been sent there by a gentleman. Once upstairs, they loaded themselves down with wearing apparel. Several suits were reported missing, a handsome overcoat, and other articles. All of them belonged to Mr. Hall, who is an employee of the National Paper Company, lately moved here from Kansas City. Evidence against Henderson that Todd Henderson, the suspected Jack the Ripper, left the vicinity of the Holly murder as late as 12:55 o'clock Tuesday morning was established Friday by Detectives Bullard
Black and Harper when they located after an arduous search. W.R. Atchison, conductor of the streetcar at that time. The body of the murdered woman was found Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock. The detectives know that Henderson was with her at 11:10 Monday night and that he left the neighborhood of the crime some 2 hours later. He still maintains his innocence, but he is not able to stick to the stories first told by him as to his movements prior and subsequent to the crime. Friday morning, a basket of bloody clothes was found at the foot of Grant Street by the employees of the Jellicoe Coal Company and turned over to policemen Folds and Turner. An investigation is being made regarding them. Ripper with $250 captured. Governor Hoke Smith offered reward on request of committee. Chamber of Commerce representatives also call on the mayor. Council will be asked to take action at meeting Monday. Governor Hoke Smith has offered a $250 reward for Jack the Ripper, and Mayor Cortland S. Wynn has announced his intention of taking up the matter with the City Council at its meeting Monday. The decision on the part of both officials was reached after they had been waited upon by a committee representing the Chamber of Commerce in accordance with the resolution adopted by the directors of this organization. Wednesday afternoon. Frederick J. Paxson, John E. Murphy, William L. Moore, Mel R. Wilkerson, J.T.R. Holloman, and Walter G. Cooper composed the committee which called upon Governor Smith at his office Thursday morning. The governor listened attentively to what the committee had to say and expressed his appreciation of the chambers having manifested its interest in the public welfare. Leaving the governor's office, the committee called upon Mayor Wynne at the City Hall. Here again, the committee was accorded a most courteous hearing. The mayor stated that he has had the matter under consideration for some time and has twice conferred with the police about it within the past week. He assured the committee that every possible effort to land the criminal will be made. Links in the Ripper chain. On Saturday night last, Todd Henderson, the Negro held on suspicion of being Jack the Ripper, was seen in a Decatur Street lodging house with Sadie Howley, who was murdered Monday night. Monday night, he appeared at the same place looking for the same woman. At 11:10 that night, he was arrested. He was seen with her on Decatur Street, and her murdered body was found in the next morning, not a quarter a mile from his house. Those are the strongest links in the chain of evidence that is being forged around Henderson by detectives Bullard, Black, and Harper. Henderson is very nervous and under questioning has contradicted himself several times. That he was seen with the Holly woman last night was proven Thursday when her body was taken from the grave during the process of funeral services to allow for its identification by the man who had seen them. The lodging house man's evidence as to Henderson's search for the Holly woman on Monday is corroborated by a Negro woman who saw and talked to the prisoner. In addition to this, conflicting evidence statements made by Henderson have been run down by the detectives. Especially interesting is one in regard to the razors and pocket knives. According to him, he has not had one of either in a year, but his wife testifies that she borrowed his knife only last week and his razor has been found in a local barber shop. It was taken there Tuesday morning
at the day after the murder by him to be sharpened, in connection with the Lena Sharp murder, which occurred 2 weeks ago at 24 Hanover Street. Henderson was identified Thursday by George Brooks, a Negro who runs a refreshment stand near the place of the murder as having been seen from coming from that direction after Emily Sharp had screamed. Brooks brought with him a bloody rag, which he declares he saw Henderson drop. Henry Huff, the young Negro held for the Holly murder, was taken before the coroner's jury Thursday morning, and under the evidence shown, was ordered held for the grand jury. He is said to have been seen with Sadie Howley on the night of the murder, and there is strong circumstantial evidence against him. His case is being worked up by detectives Coker and McGill. The finding of an aged Negro woman dead in her bed Thursday morning in the east section of the city started a report that Jack had claimed another victim. It spread like fire in a calf. Hand of God as seen in the work of the Ripper. Reverend H. H. Proctor, pastor of the First Congregational Church Colored, preached yesterday to a Negro audience of the representative colored people on the hand of God as seen in the work of Jack the Ripper. He chose for his text Daniel verse 5. In the same hour came forth the fingers of the man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall. After reading the list of 17 Negro women who have been found murdered in this community within the last 2 years, he said, among other things, when in a community of this size, 17 women can be murdered within 2 years. Manifestly, there are some things out of joint. This crisis, he cannot lay claim to vision who does not see the hand of God in pointing to the sins and duties of this community. Let us be plain and frank. I believe these murderers are black men. The circumstances point that way. While many of the murdered women were hardworking and industrious, investigation shows that some of them were not what they ought to have been. This trouble then arises from the bad people of our race. But why these bad people exist? In the first place, there is too much lawlessness in our community. Lawlessness begets lawlessness. The colored people are imitative, especially quick to catch on to the faults of those buff above them. There are too many places of evil permitted in the community. Every blind tiger, gambling den, and house of evil should be shut down. Near beer saloons have no rightful place in a prohibition state like Georgia. The about abolition of the saloon was one of the best blessings that came to our people. But the bloody hand points to the sins of the colored people themselves. Our churches are doing good work, but they are not doing enough. They do not sufficiently relate their efforts to actual life. They have been getting people ready to die when they should have been preparing them to live. The best preparation for the next world is to live right in this. Our churches are not progressive enough. Shut up 6 days a week. The people pass by them on to the places prepared for them. The places for evil are never shut. Our good people are under the bondage of a narrow ideology. Each man is bent on having his own soul and saving his own soul. The only way to save one's soul is by saving the soul of another. Decatur Street is a reproach to our churches in the city. It's, if each member of our churches would go down in that street and save one of its habitants, it would be better than all of our praying and singing. In our work in this institutional church, open as it is night and day, endeavoring to work for the upliftment of the whole man, body, mind, and soul, seeking to save rich and poor, working in back alley, slum, and prison, we make a peculiar appeal to the best people to work for the upliftment of the lowest. Fidelity to the post of work in a church like this has been a peculiar effect in creating those conditions that will make the work of a Jack the Ripper impossible. Photograph of Reverend Proctor. Mayor Wynne will send special message to council on Jack the Ripper. The mayor will send a special communication to the city council this afternoon asking that rewards be offered for the unapprehended perpetrators of the many murders of Negro women committed during the last year. This is an answer to the petition presented to the mayor by many of the leading Negro citizens of Atlanta. This is from the Atlanta Georgian in the news. Mayor will recommend award for murderer. Mayor Wynne stated Friday morning that he will recommend to council at its meeting Monday that reward offered for the capture and conviction of the murderers of the numerous Negro women who have recently been found with their throats cut. I do not believe, I do not know whether it's one Jack the Ripper, said the mayor, or several, but I will ask the council to fix a reward. Mayor said it is not within the authority of the mayor to offer a reward, so without suggesting the amount, he puts the matter up to the council. He further says that have he does not favor offering special rewards to the police, but that such inducements might persuade outside parties to give up information they might possess. The police are paid a salary for their work, said Mayor Wynne. He held a conference with the heads of the police department several days ago, during which he asked why there have been no arrests and convictions for these murders. He's told these men that a proper efficiency should show some results. This is from the Atlanta Journal. One indictment, two arrests, and assault and battery convictions out of 20 murders. One indictment by the grand jury, but subsequent escape. Two arrested Negroes bound over to the higher courts, and one convicted of assault and battery. Such, according to Mayor Courtland Wynn, is what the combined detective and police departments have accomplished toward punishing the perpetrators of the 20-odd cold-blooded murders of Negro women in Atlanta during the past 18 months. As a result of the conference the mayor held Tuesday with Chief Jennings of the police department and Chief Lanford of the detective department and Chairman Carlos Mason of the police board, the, the detective department has prepared a list of the arrests and convictions for murder in the past 18 months. This, however, does not cover but three of the murders in the list of 20 or more submitted to the mayor by a delegation of Negro citizens who called on him Tuesday morning to ask that he recommend for council to offer a reward for Jack the Ripper or whoever it is committing the weekly murders of Negro women. Mayor Wynne states that he will address a special communication to the council Monday recommending that a reward be offered for the arrest and conviction of the murderer of each of the Negro women who have been killed in the past 2 months or if it is found that all have been committed by the same person or by two or three men, proportionate rewards will be offered, will be paid for their arrest and conviction. The grounds on which the police department excuses the failure to stop the wave of lawlessness and crime states may win are that the force is too small, that most of the murders in question were committed in remote, isolated sections of the city, and that in most cases they were not discovered until several days afterwards. The chief of the report of Chief Lamford follows in full. To the Honorable Cortland S. Wynn, Mayor, City of Atlanta, dear sir, I herewith submit report of the murders that have been traced down and convicted in the last 18 months. May 8, 1910, Mamie Wilson shot and killed by Grace Jones, who was tried and acquitted on ground of self-defense. April 23rd, 1910, S. R. Brown, motorman, robbed and killed in Jewel Hill, and of four men tried for the crime, Charlie Walker and Ed Weave were convicted and hanged. May 6, 1910, son Tiddle's wife killed, Mary Fortson, who was tried and convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years. May 22, 1910, Sarah Dukes, murdered by John Henry Perkins and A. R. White. White was convicted and given 12 months for assault and battery, and the case against Perkins is still pending. July 4, 1910, Frances Lambkin, killed by her husband, Walter Lambkin, who made his escape and has been traced to California. December 1909, Steve Morris, shot and killed by Frank Brooks, who was convicted and hanged in June 1910. Molly Brown, killed on East Harris Street by her husband, Son Morrow, who was tried and acquitted on grounds of it being an accidental shooting. Sloan Jackson, murdered by Steve Dixon, who was convicted and given a life sentence. February 4th, 1911, Cindy McNeil, killed by her husband, Charles McNeil, who was convicted and given a life term. June 16, Addie Watts, found dead, decabbed in Quad Street, and Arthur Boyd bound over by the recorder on June 23rd for the crime. You will notice that in this list are several which are included in the list printed in the daily papers yesterday. Our men are working very diligently, endeavoring to find out the perpetrators of these crimes and are doing everything that lie in their power to bring them to justice. This article, titled "Lanford and Mason Defend Police Force," is from the Atlanta Georgian. It basically reaffirms what the Atlanta Journal had stated earlier in regards to the chief of detectives responding to criticism of the police department. At the bottom of the page, it reads, Mason defends police force. Chairman Carlos Mason of the Police Commission, who had just returned from a trip to New York City, is evincing an interest in the matter of the series of crimes and attended public censure of the police department. Chairman Mason declares that everything possible is being done to run Jack the Ripper to earth and that the police department will spare no means to do this. He pays tribute to the department, asserting that it is the best organized and finest department of its size in the country. I have studied the police of many of the leading cities of the United States, said Chairman Mason Friday morning, and I could confidently say that Atlanta has the best organized and finest police force of any city of the same size in this country. The men are good workers, and they are doing good work.
The records of the department justify this decision. The department is seriously handicapped, however, by its small size in comparison with the size and needs of the city. But despite this hindrance, fine work is being accomplished in the capture of criminals. We need more men, and we need them at once to give proper protection to the city. As it is now, we only have from 40 to 60 men on each of the three watches, a totally inadequate number to properly patrol the streets in a city as large as Atlanta. If the city would give us more policemen, and the police service, of course, will be materially improved. Chairman Mason also referred to the visit of President Taft, during which the president highly complimented the police. In response to a plea of a special committee from the Chamber of Commerce, Governor Smith Thursday offered a reward for 250 for the capture of Jack the Ripper. The same committee was assured by Mayor Wynne that he would take up the matter with the City Council Monday, at which it is expected this body will also offer a reward. The committee is asking the offer of rewards was composed of Fred J. Paxson, John E. Murphy, and Walter J. Cooper. Detectives are actively at work Friday in an effort to obtain more evidence against the two suspects, Todd Henderson and Henry Huff. Henderson was identified Friday morning by conductor Atchison of the Lakewood Trolley Line as having boarded his car at the Beltline crossing at 12:55 o'clock Monday night, the night of the murder. The Negro came into the city on the car. He boarded the car near his home. This evidence contradicts the suspect, who declared to Detective George Bullard that he did not leave his home at all Monday night. Detective Bullard is satisfied that he has a strong circumstantial case against Henderson. This article is from the Atlanta Journal, titled "Negro Mass Meeting Deplore Crime Wave. Speakers Address Big Gathering at Wheat Street Church, Resolutions Passed." The Negro men in Atlanta gathered in a mass meeting Sunday afternoon at the Wheat Street Baptist Church and heard several strong speakers of their own race condemn the lawlessness which has terrorized the Negro women of the city for the past few weeks. About 1,000 Negroes attended the meeting. Bills were given, and advance notice of it had been circulating among the Negro people of the city, bidding them all to be there and protest against the protracted murder of colored women and take positive action and definitive steps to break it up. If we want the protection of the city and state authorities, we must present a solid front, said the circular. This is no time for excuse making. Something must be done at once. Reverend P. J. Bryant, Professor P. C. Parks, J. McHenry, Reverend R. D. Stinson, H. A. Rucker, and one or two more other speakers addressed the gathering of their people. The speakers deplored the crimes being perpetrated so constantly, praised the good work being praised to rid the city of criminals, stressed the importance of aiding the authorities in helping them run down the criminals, condemned gambling, blind tigers, and houses of bad repute, and adopted by unanimous standing vote the following resolution offered by H. A. Rucker. Whereas a wave of crime from the from foul and brutish murder to petty theft and minor disorders is undermining our city's civic foundations and spreading terror to our women, and whereas the Chamber of Commerce, the mayor of the city,
the governor of the state, and the influential and prominent citizens in the daily press have united to aid the police and detective departments in their active, earnest efforts to bring criminals to justice and prevent additional outrages. Therefore, be it resolved that we tender our thanks to all those giving encouragement and support in the effort to apprehend the, and punish the criminals and prevent the commission of further crime in our community. This is from the Atlanta Georgian, dated July 17th. Todd Henderson held over for the state court. Two Negroes now accused of Ripper murder. One is innocent. Todd Henderson, the Jack the Ripper suspect, was Monday bound over to the state court by Recorder Boyles for murder in one case. Todd Henderson is held for the murder of Sadie Holly last Monday night. Henry Huff, another Negro suspect, was ordered by a coroner's jury a few days ago for the same crime, which means both Negroes will go before the grand jury. A chain of circumstantial evidence having been woven about each of them. Evidence has been also presented in the effort to fasten on Henderson the murder of Lena Sharp on Saturday night, July 4th, but the recorder held it insufficient and dismissed the case. In the Holly case, it was shown that Henderson was seen with the woman about 11 o'clock on the night of the killing, and other circumstances were shown to contradict statements he made concerning his movements on that night. Henderson made a lengthy statement denying he is guilty. Henderson is represented by attorneys Thomas L. Bishop and A. D. Vieira, while detectives Black and Harper represented the prosecution. This is from the Atlanta Journal the same day. Henderson bound over for Ripper deed. Henderson held by recorder for Holly murder. Sharp case thrown out. Todd Henderson was held by the recorder Monday morning for the murder of Sadie Holly, one of the Ripper victims. An effort was made by detectives Black, Bullard, and Harper to have the man bound over for murder in two cases. The Holly murder and the Sharp murder. The second case, however, was thrown out on the motion of the defendant's attorneys. No case having been made. A strong circumstantial case was made out against the Negro by the city. According to the prosecution witnesses, he was with Sadie Holly on Decatur Street at 11 o'clock Monday night, the evening the woman was murdered. Two streetcar men swore that Henderson caught a Washington streetcar at the AWP Beltline crossing at 1 o'clock. This crossing is the only a short distance from Henderson's home and also where from the place where the Holly woman was murdered. In his statement, Henderson said that he had first told the officers that he spent the Monday at his home. Later, he changed his statement, giving a plausible reason for the provocation, and said he spent the night on Decatur Street. He denied having been with the woman on Saturday or or on a previous occasion or on the Monday of the murder. The officers declared that Henderson's shoes fitted the tracks around the mud near the body of the murdered woman. Several witnesses were introduced in an effort to show that Henderson had not been telling officers the truth about his movements. Several witnesses, among them the murdered woman's daughter, declared that they had seen a man who resembled Henderson near the spot where Lena Sharp was killed in about the time of the commission of the crime. July 18th, 1911, Atlanta, Georgia. Negro Boys Club writes to mayor. The following letter has been sent to Mayor Wynne from the officers of the Boys Fourth Ward Club Negroes. To the mayor of the city, citizens and friends, we also wish to greet thanks to the fair-minded white people who helped remove the Auburn pool parties from our principal churches in this city. We also wish that to state that we love our race as much as any other race does, especially the women of our race, and and it certainly makes our hearts burn with within us to think how brutally and cruelly they are being killed each week. We feel that if we had more police protection and a few colored detectives, probably they would be able to discover the criminal. If the law would give us the authority and permit us to carry arms, we are ready and willing to go out anytime and sacrifice our lives if needs be to help bring justice to the so-called Jack the Ripper. Not everyone believed in the so-called Ripper theory. Some believed that all of these murders were individual crimes. One of these people was Judge Nash Broyles. This is from the Atlanta, Georgian article. No Jack the Ripper, says Recorder Boyles. He thinks there were as many criminals as there were crimes. Recorder Boyles takes issue with the prevalent idea that the series of Negro women murders in Atlanta of late, generally attributed to a Jack the Ripper, were committed by any one man. The recorder expressed himself during the trial of a Negro case in police court Tuesday morning and expressed the concern that the various murders are merely an outgrowth of jealousy or hatred of husbands towards their wives. The court cited the fact that almost every day cases, sometimes several of them in one day, are tried before him in which Negro women have had their husbands arrested for mistreating them and for threatening to cut their throats and or kill them in some way. It was just such a case as this that was on trial when the recorder expressed himself. Jim Murphy, a Negro, had threatened to cut his wife's throat, and she had him arrested. He was fined $27.25. There is no such thing in Atlanta as a Negro Jack the Ripper, remarked the recorder. It is just it is just such cases as these that result in the murders of Negro women. I am satisfied that every one of these several Negro women slain recently in Atlanta were murdered by different men. There are at least 1,000 Negro men today who stand ready to cut the throats of their wives at the slightest provocation. As to the fact that most of the Negro women victims have been slain on Saturday nights, Judge Boyle said this was simply because Saturday night is the Negro's big night, the time when he tanks up and when he is more likely to get jealous or angry and desire to avenge his wrong or imaginary wrongs by spilling blood. Atlanta, Georgia, July 19th, 1911. Negro Baptists thank city and ministers. The Men's Progressive League of Wheat Street Baptist Church Colored has adopted the following resolution: to whom it may concern. The Men's Progressive League of Wheat Street Baptist Church wish to thank the Police Commission, the Police Committee, and Council and the fair-minded white people of this city who, in answer to our petition, refused to grant license to the Auburn pool parlor. We hereby assure them that our services are at their disposal for the suppression of crime and the upholding of the majesty of the law. In this convention, we plead for the cooperation and influence of the press, council, state, and the fair-minded white people to bring to a speedy justice the so-called Jack the Ripper, who is boldly murdering women of our race. Our motto is the preservation of law and order. We feel that our motion will be better understood if our white friends will give us a few Negro policemen and detectives instead of stool pigeons. This article is from the Atlanta Constitution, July 20th, 1911. Negro crushes head of Negro crushes skull of his better half, makes third attempt at murder within the week. If Jack the Ripper is behind bars, or if he has ceased his work with his eighth murder, his activities are still going under the capable control of the Negro husbands of the city. Within the week, no less than three attempts to murder wives have been reported to the police department. The most serious occurring last night on Schofield Street. The Negro man was arrested by Corps Officers Webb and Bullard, his wife being sent to the hospital where her condition is serious. Her head is badly crushed and her throat is cut. The trouble occurred around 9:30 o'clock in the whole of Schofield Street near the corner of Hilliard was thrown in an uproar by a small Negro boy who ran screaming into a saloon. "He done killed Mama. Lordy, don't let him get me," he cried. Frank Smith appeared on the street, his shirt soaked with blood as if he had been clasping a murdered body. He was captured and locked up. Family trouble, abetted by drink, is said to have been the cause of the row. The excitement of the happenings sent a half a dozen Negroes to the station house later, of whom at least four were positively the capturers of the murderer. Now, around this time, several newspapers outside of Atlanta started spreading the claims that the Atlanta Police Department were looking for a white degenerate who was masquerading as a black man and committing these crimes. According to the newspaper, the theory was that this white man dressed up as a black man or used some type of blackface to look black and went around committing his crimes. The only evidence offered for this theory was the case of Mary Adele and Mr. Seltzer, when Mr. Seltzer, a white man, encountered the Ripper at an alley near his house. Although it doesn't say this in this particular article, other articles suggested that had the Ripper truly been a black man, Mr. Seltzer, a white man, would have shot him, and that the fact that Mr. Seltzer did not shoot him suggested the fact that the Atlanta Ripper was really a white man in disguise. These articles suggest that this white man was trying to keep black women off the streets, and that is why he was committing this crime. These articles show the racism that was prevalent at the time when they are trying to justify the murders of black women by suggesting a white man is trying to clean the streets of, of women who are committing immoral activities. I have not seen any article like this in the local Atlanta papers. There's no reason to believe that there's any truth to these rumors. None of the Atlanta papers, the Atlanta Journal, or the Atlanta Constitution, or the Atlanta, Georgia, and the News ever printed an article like this suggesting that the police were looking for a white man dressing up as a black person. Whenever there's a tragedy, there's always people who try to benefit off of it. Newspapers record the efforts of a certain Mr. Hoffman, a German man who offered his services as an astrologer to help capture the Atlanta Ripper. This is from his letter. I see by the papers that there is a man who is killing people by the wholesale in Atlanta.
Now that fellow ought to be caught, and I can catch him. All you that should do is to send the name of one of the victims, the day of the week and the day of the month and the year she was born, and where she was killed, the date and the direction from the heart of the city, and the matter in which she was killed. Right away, I could tell you what sort of fella killed her. Hoffman says he's an astrologer and tops a highly decorated letterhead with the motto, "There is more in astrology than most people think." Sheriff Magnum thinks it would be a little hard to have him cipher out who killed the victims of the alleged Ripper, but is thinking of submitting an easy one by inquiring when Governor Smith will resign and take his seat in the Senate. These two articles are from the Atlanta Georgian and the Atlanta Constitution. The first one from the Atlanta Georgian reads, Slayer and victim rolled in Negro cab. Cabman gives testimony that may clear Ripper mystery. The arrest of a Negro cabman as a material witness Friday night by detectives Coker and McGill may clear the mystery of the recent murder of Sadie Holly, a Negro woman, a Jack the Ripper victim, and fasten the crime on Henry Huff, a Negro already under arrest. The cabman, Will Williams, has signed a statement in which he says he hauled Henry Huff and Sadie Holly in his cab on the night of the murder to the spot where the crime was committed, an old cornfield at Atlanta Ave and Almond Street. He says Henry Huff and the woman quarreled nearly all the way to the scene of the crime. Not only this, but he says as he drove away, he heard a woman scream. The cabman was taken to the scene and pointed out to detectives where the spot where he says the couple alighted from the cab. This evidence, with other circumstances already brought to light, the detectives are satisfied they will fasten the crime on Huff. In this event, Todd Henderson, another suspect bound over by the recorder, would be freed. Henry Huff bound over. Another Jack the Ripper was committed by local justice to the Superior Court for murder without bond yesterday. He is Henry Huff, who has been under arrest for some time, suspected of being the murderer of Sadie Holly near Atlanta Avenue on the night of July 20th. The case was made by detectives Coker and McGill and is very clear. The most important witness is Hattie Mae Tai, a Negro woman who worked at the same laundry where Huff and the Holly woman were employed. She swore that she saw them together within 100 yards of the scene of the murder sometime after midnight Monday night. Atlanta, Georgian, and the news. August 9, 1911, grand jury begins probes into crime. Jack the Ripper cases are taken up. Jail is full of malefactors. The, in- the official inquisitors of Fulton County met Wednesday morning and organized for the grand jury probe into the many felonies, 57 of the accused now being in the county jail. The second floor of the Thorough building, Solicitor Hugh M. Dorsey's offices and the halls were crowded with about 300 witnesses summoned to appear in the many cases. Some 30 Atlanta detectives and policemen were present. The jail cases were examined first, and the most important investigation is that being made into the Negro Jack the Ripper cases. The Negro suspects, two Negro suspects, have been arrested and charged with being Jack the Ripper and having done murder. It is said that a close probe is being made into the charges against Henry Huff, one of the alleged rippers, and after this is finished, the grand jury will take up the allegations against Todd Henderson on the same charge. The grand jury, as organized, is a strong body and composed of some of the best men of Atlanta and Fulton County. It is Solicitor General Hugh Dorsey's busy time, and he is constantly with the inquisitors. All sorts of crimes are being investigated. The grand jury will be in session Wednesday and Thursday, and if not through with the business, will take a recess until Tuesday. August 10th, 1911. Atlanta Constitution. Two Jack the Rippers are indicted. Grand jury acts in regard to two of the Negro suspects. Two of the Jack the Rippers were indicted yesterday by the grand jury, one of them being entirely new suspect named John Daniels, and the other being Henry Huff, whose name has been connected for some time with the series of Negro women, murders of Negro women. Daniel and Huff were charged with the murder, and as the similarity of the crimes were masked, were marked, the grand jury felt that it might properly be considered as the Jack the Ripper case. The case of Todd Henderson, another suspect, was not taken up Wednesday, but a large number of bails were returned for burglary and minor offenses. Only two murder bills only two murder true bills were made out, though another case was considered in connection with the Daniel Negro. It appeared that a second one was mixed up in the Daniels mystery, but sufficient evidence to support a true bill was not brought forward. The jury was made up of 20 the jury made out 22 indictments and completed the work of organization. Now, this article claims that John Daniels, was a new suspect, but in fact, he had been a suspect even before Henry Huff, having been arrested for the murder of Addie Watts. Fear of the Ripper spread out from Atlanta. On August 21, 1911, the Atlanta Georgian-News recorded that the population of Acworth, Georgia, was in terror of a supposed site of the alleged Atlanta fiend. The article reads as titled, Jack the Ripper in Acworth, Georgia, August 21. The colored population of Acworth has have been greatly disturbed for the past week or 10 days over the wild rumors that Jack the Ripper is in Acworth. He has been reported seen by several Negroes nearly every night, and nearly all of the Negroes are keeping indoors close after dark. A great many are sitting up nights with their doors and windows barricaded and heavily armed. Local police are unable to get any tangible evidence as to the actual whereabouts of the reported desperado. From the Atlanta Georgian, the Ripper seeks release on habeas corpus writ. Petition is filed for Todd Henderson, charged with killing Sadie Hardy. Todd Henderson, a Negro, one of the so-called Jack the Rippers charged with the murder of Sadie Hardy, a Negro woman, is making effort to be released from the tower on habeas corpus proceedings. W. Smith and other attorneys associated with the case appeared before Judge George Bell Saturday morning with the petition, the hearing, however, being postponed until Monday at the request of Hugh Dorsey, solicitor of the criminal court.
Mr. Dorsey will fight the effort stringently and asked that it be postponed that several state witnesses may be summoned to appear. The attorneys for Henderson are seeking his release on the grounds that the grand jury failed to indict him at this term of court and further detention of the prisoner is unlawful. This is a photograph showing the prosecutor, also known as the Solicitor General, Hugh Dorsey, who would later become governor of Georgia. On August 30th, 1911, the Atlanta Georgian and the News reported that Todd Henderson had been released from custody. The article reads as follows: Todd Henderson freed from murder charge. Todd Henderson, one of the Negro Jack the Ripper suspects arrested by city detectives several weeks ago, was released Wednesday afternoon on a order of Justice Ridley, before whom a writ of habeas corpus was argued. Attorneys for Henderson last week filed a writ of habeas corpus before Judge Pendleton in Superior Court. On Tuesday, Judge Pendleton heard the argument and ordered that the case be referred to a justice of the peace, since Henderson had not been indicted and the case therefore not properly before the Superior Court. Accordingly, it was taken before Justice Ridley. Henry Huff, another suspect also arrested by detectives, has been indicted and is now in jail, charged with murdering Sadie Holly, the same woman Henderson was suspected of killing. The last grand jury indicted Huff, but adjourned without taking up Henderson's case. Both Negroes were bound over by recorder lawyers. Now, this article is important because if you read some articles and books about the Atlanta Ripper case online or in books, you will see some claim that Todd Henderson was still in prison when the murders resumed in September 1911. However, Jeffrey Wells, author of the Atlanta Ripper book, also makes this claim. However, this claim is contradicted by both the Atlanta Georgian and the Atlanta Journal, which both state that Todd Henderson had been released by the court order in August 30th, 1911. After the release of Todd Henderson on August 30th, 1911, newspapers would report on the discovery of another dead black woman, her throat cut just like the others. However, I will not discuss this case in this video because this is the end of part one of Atlanta's Black Jack the Ripper videos. Now, the reason why I'm posting this video is to give information on the series of crimes, but also to promote a book that I am writing. I am writing a book on these cases that I hope will be published soon. It is my goal that if I am published, that I will be able to write a novel series based on these cases. This is part one of these series. I will do another video covering the Ripper's crimes from from August 1911 to 1913. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the Ripper's crimes continued until 1924, so I will do a series of videos on each of the crime sprees. At the bottom of the